Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Nicole Pietz. Nicole Pietz was born on February 26, 1973 in King County, Washington. Nicole was the only child in her family and her parents divorced when she was in school. During her high school years, Nicole was an active, sociable, athletic girl who was well-liked by many people. She had many friends and enjoyed field trips to the countryside. After graduating from high school, Nicole studied public relations at Western Washington College. At the same time, Nicole was still actively involved in sports. Nicole took a coaching position at a local sports club. Nicole quickly gained the respect of her colleagues, and Nicole attracted many customers to her classes. After graduating from college, Nicole decided to continue her education to improve her management skills. She found a job at a large mobile communications company. Nicole's personality is friendly, sociable, and willing to help people, but few people know that inside she is suffering from a lot of pain and suffering. Nicole's teenage years were severely affected by alcoholism. The divorce of her parents was a huge shock to her fragile psyche. Her rebellious nature and bad friends influenced her, and she began drinking. All of this led to a serious alcoholism that lasted for many years and completely undermined Nicole's physical and mental health. At that time, Nicole's mother, Gail, worked as a flight attendant and was often away from home because of her busy work. Therefore, Gail did not realize the change in Nicole. Nicole lives with her elderly grandmother, who also did not realize that her granddaughter regularly drank alcohol. When the truth was revealed, alcoholism had caused severe damage to Nicole. To help Nicole, Gail, her mother, accompanied Nicole to support her. Gail accompanied Nicole to therapy and alcoholism meetings, helping Nicole open up and overcome her cravings. At that time, Nicole's mother Gail had remarried, and Gail's new husband, Robert, was supportive of his stepdaughter, loving Nicole like his own daughter and believing that Nicole could overcome her alcoholism. Nicole took treatment very seriously. She did not miss a single meeting and quickly overcame her addiction. However, alcohol caused many health problems for Nicole. She had serious problems with her pancreas that required surgery. In addition, her alcoholism at a young age had seriously affected her fertility, making it impossible for Nicole to have children. In the mid-1990s, when Nicole was recovering from her addiction and living sober again, Nicole met David. At the time, Nicole had just gotten a job at a sports club, and David was a regular at the club. David was a tall, handsome young man. David was immediately attracted to Nicole, an attractive trainer, and David began to show interest in her. David, who was 4 years younger than Nicole, soon developed a relationship that lasted almost 8 years, and it was not until 2002 that the couple decided to marry. David and Nicole had a simple wedding in Hawaii, inviting only their closest friends. After their marriage, the newlyweds bought their own house and began to settle down in the town of Linwood, Washington. Nicole was a friendly and outgoing young woman who quickly made friends and built good relationships with her neighbors. Nicole loved animals and had several dogs. Because she could not have children, Nicole devoted all her love to these pets. David and Nicole were a perfect couple. They often went for walks with their dogs and always had happy smiles on their faces. Nicole loved to cook, and she was a very good cook. Nicole often treated her husband to delicious meals cooked by herself. In 2006, just a few days before her 33rd birthday, Nicole mysteriously disappeared. That day, for the first time, she did not attend an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, where she was the leader and inspiration for the group. Nicole also did not come to work, making her colleagues even more worried. In the evening, her mother, Gail, felt very worried when she could not contact Nicole all day, which had never happened before. Gail called Nicole's husband, David, to find out what was going on. However, David could not contact Nicole either. David said that David and Nicole had argued a little the day before, so when he tried calling Nicole the next day and got no response, he thought that Nicole was still angry with him. David did not rush to find Nicole right away, but waited until the evening to ask for her forgiveness. However, Nicole still did not come home that night. Nicole's family tried to contact her by phone but received no response. They decided to go to the police to report the incident. However, the police did not immediately accept their report because Nicole was an adult and had only been missing for less than a day. It was not until the evening of the second day after Nicole went missing that the police began searching. When Nicole did not appear and her phone was unreachable, the police decided to start searching from where she was last seen, which was her and David's house. However, after investigating, the police did not find any clues or unusual signs that Nicole had been kidnapped or that something had happened to her in that house. And Nicole's car was also missing with her, suggesting that she may have left on her own and did not want to return. Her mother Gail and stepfather Robert did not wait for the police to wait the required time and began the search themselves. They appealed to all concerned through social media to help in the search and share any relevant information about Nicole's location. Nicole's father and mother also took the first flight to Linwood, where they began searching for Nicole themselves, handing out flyers with her photo and asking people who knew her. The police searched for Nicole and her car. They tried to determine the route the car had taken on the day Nicole went missing. But there were no clues. The next morning a man was jogging when he took a shortcut through an area that was very sparsely populated. As he passed through that area, he noticed something strange in the bushes. As he got closer, he realized it was the severely mutilated body of a naked woman. He immediately called the police and reported the incident. The police quickly arrived at the scene. At the scene was the body of a young woman without any clothes on. Based on the number of bruises and scratches, the victim had been brutally beaten. The cause of death was asphyxiation due to strangulation with bare hands. The police suspected that the body was Nicole Pietz, who had been missing for several days. When Nicole's mother, Gail, went to the morgue to identify the body, Gail fainted when she saw the body, and her husband, Robert, was also very sad. As for Nicole's husband, David, he did not show any signs of grief. This made everyone around David feel a little suspicious of his reaction. The police continued to search for Nicole's car, hoping to find traces of the killer in the car. Information about the missing car was widely publicized in the media, along with a call for people to contact the police if they saw the car. Some time later, a gray Volkswagen Polo was found in a parking lot on the outskirts of town. The security guard there discovered the car when he realized that it had been left there for a long time. At the time, he did not know that the car was involved in this serious murder. The police took the car for inspection and examined it to look for evidence and clues to help track down the criminal. However, after the inspection, they found no traces, except for the fingerprints and DNA traces of Nicole and her husband David. Without finding any concrete evidence, the police returned the car to David. The truth is that Nicole was brutally murdered, but the motive for the crime remains unclear. In addition, the carjacking theory is unlikely, as the car was abandoned shortly after on the other side of town. Nicole Pietz's case remains unsolved after nearly a year of investigation. There have been no new leads or leads in the search for the perpetrator. No one saw the suspect leave his car in the parking lot because it was not crowded and there were no surveillance cameras in the area. What is suspicious is that Nicole's case has been kept secret. Information about the investigation and new evidence has not been disclosed to the family. Nicole's relatives have not been fully updated, only receiving small details. Nicole's bank card was used at a gas station after she went missing. Although the police have collected images from the cameras, they have not yet disclosed the results of the investigation. When Nicole's case did not progress and the perpetrator was still at large, Nicole's parents decided to conduct an investigation themselves. They hired a private investigator to gather information, verify some suspicions, and offer a reward for anyone who could provide useful information. The reward was initially $10,000 and later increased to $35,000, but no new leads were found. David initially showed great interest in investigating Nicole's disappearance for the first 6 months. However, after that time, he began to distance himself and had little contact with his in-laws, and David eventually remarried and had children of his own. The news of David's remarriage and children of his own came as a huge shock to Nicole's mother, Gail, because Nicole was unable to have children and was often blamed by David. A grief-stricken Gail repeatedly hinted that the culprit might be her son-in-law. 6 years later, Nicole's case took an unexpected turn. David was arrested as the prime suspect in the case. David did not expect that he himself would be the focus of this investigation. Previously, David had changed his residence and lost contact with Nicole's family, so he thought that the case was over and no one was looking for him. However, David was very surprised when the police raided and arrested him. At that time, David even declared his innocence and was willing to take a lie detector test, but he failed the test. As for the police, they suspected David from the beginning, but lacked concrete evidence. In order to arrest David, the police gathered a lot of evidence to ensure that he was responsible for the crime. In fact, David himself probably thought that he had committed the crime perfectly and would never be discovered. A video from the gas station provided an important clue. Footage of the moment a man paid with Nicole's card showed that the man looked similar to David. Although the man was wearing a hat and sunglasses, making identification more difficult, the footage was a key clue in the case. Police also discovered that Nicole was not wearing her wedding ring. Nicole never left the house without it. Initially, police thought the ring had been stolen with other items, but the box containing the ring was later found on a dressing table in Nicole's home. Police discovered a mouth guard in Nicole's mouth during the autopsy. This was a device Nicole had been prescribed shortly before the tragedy, as she suffered from uncontrollable spasms of her chewing muscles due to anxiety, which led to worn enamel and chipped teeth. The presence of this device suggested that Nicole may have been murdered while she was still asleep in her bed. It is possible that David had forgotten that his wife was using a mouth guard because she had only recently started using it. In addition, the police examined the traces left in Nicole's car. Only David's and Nicole's fingerprints were found in the car. No traces of anyone else were found, suggesting that there was no third person involved in the murder. The investigation also shed light on Nicole and David's family situation at the time. David did not hold any permanent jobs and preferred to spend his time in bars and clubs, where David spent all of Nicole's earnings on alcohol and other women. The family was facing serious financial problems, and the situation became worse over time. Nicole tried to convince David to change his lifestyle and attend alcohol rehabilitation meetings to help David get back on track. However, David's response was indifferent and insulting. David had affairs with many women. Nicole's mother Gail knew about the serious problems in Nicole's family and tried to convince Nicole to leave David. However, Nicole did not want to do so because she loved David and hoped he would change. After Nicole's death, her husband David quickly received a large insurance payout and started a new relationship. Before that, David had been having an affair with a girl named Jane for several months. David often spent time with her at bars and clubs when Nicole was busy working or studying. Before Nicole's birthday, David brought his mistress home, where they were caught by Nicole. This incident became the cause of an argument in the family. Nicole told her mother about the incident, and a few days later, she mysteriously disappeared. Because Gail knew everything, she suspected David from the beginning. However, the police said that the evidence collected was too little to arrest the suspect. The case was kept secret and the family was never heard from again. When David received a large insurance payout after Nicole's death, he spent the money with his mistress, Jane. David appeared in court in September 2013 for his crimes. David received the maximum sentence possible under the laws of the state where the case was tried. David served 18 years in prison. However, in 2025, he could be eligible for parole after serving 2/3 of his sentence. Hey detectives! Welcome back. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Lauren Stewart. Lauren Stewart was born on January 9, 1973. She has spent most of her life in Michigan. Lauren pursued her passions as a model and actress, attending workshops and interacting with photographers to further her career. Those who know her describe her as charming and easygoing. Lauren is passionate about her acting and modeling work. She enjoys new experiences, learning from others and sharing ideas, seeing life as an adventure and striving to live life to the fullest. Lauren is married to Daniel Stewart, a senior software architect at the University of Michigan, where he works predicting heart attacks. Prior to his current role, Daniel spent several years in the tech industry as a Coda developer. Lauren and Daniel were devout Christians in the Jehovah's Witnesses sect for a long time until 2013, when they decided to leave Christianity. Lauren and Daniel have 2 children, Stephen Stewart, 27, a data solutions architect and computer scientist, and Bethany Stewart, 24, a talented artist and graphic designer. At 45, Lauren seems to have the perfect life, a loving husband, well-educated children, a thriving modeling career, and a beautiful home in Keio Harbor. But deep inside, Lauren struggled with the emotional pain of being shunned and rejected by the Jehovah's Witness community she grew up in. The strict rules and practices of shunning former members took their toll on her. Lauren and Daniel's decision to leave the faith was a difficult one. The Laurens remained devout Jehovah's Witnesses until 2013, but the church's strict rules posed problems for their children's futures. Celebrating holidays was forbidden and higher education was prohibited, with the threat of expulsion for non-compliance. When Daniel asked for his children to attend university, he was warned that defying church policy would result in expulsion, which was distressing for the family as it meant complete social isolation, even from relatives. Lauren's family made the decision to leave the Jehovah's Witnesses after careful consideration. While the decision initially seemed right, they soon faced strong opposition from their community, which became unbearable, especially for Lauren. She found that even simple tasks like going shopping became difficult due to hostile looks and hurtful comments from former friends. Although these comments were not directed at her, they were said loudly enough for her to hear. Living in a small community of 3,300 residents, many of whom were Jehovah's Witnesses, Lauren's family faced a harsh reality, with prominent church members constantly reminding Lauren of her outcast status. The emotional stress eventually became too much to bear. Lauren turned to exercise to regain her health. She worked out regularly and made it her routine, which led to a dramatic change. Lauren became a fitness trainer and found success as a model. Despite being rejected by the church, Lauren appeared optimistic and confident to those around her. However, behind her pleasant exterior, Lauren was secretly struggling with chronic depression. She had been battling this condition for some time, and it had gotten worse since being ostracized by the church. As a result, Lauren often hid her true feelings behind a fake smile. Lauren's family was drowning in debt, on the brink of bankruptcy. Overwhelmed by the pressure of her own financial difficulties and emotional pain, Lauren devised a plan to solve all her problems at once. She began researching ways to end her life and videos on how to use a pistol. On February 15, 2018, Lauren left a heartbreaking note on the dining room table, meticulously cleaned the house, and sent messages to loved ones and Daniel's boss. And finally, Lauren flipped through all the family photos on her desk. Lauren texted her husband's boss at 9:24 a.m. saying that her husband Daniel had died in an accident and that she would provide more information later. However, she did not respond to her boss's subsequent messages. At 5:07 p.m. that same day, Lauren texted her cousin, saying that she was taking her family with her so they wouldn't have to suffer. She said that they would sleep until Christ was resurrected and hoped that her cousin would do better than her. Her cousin was frightened by the message and told Lauren not to harm herself or her family. Lauren had been suffering from mental health issues in recent months that her family had not known about. She had a gun and made the tragic decision to use it to kill her loved ones. Lauren's first victim was her husband, Daniel, 47, who was shot in the head while trying to escape from the basement where he was relaxing. Lauren used a pillow as a silencer to muffle the sound of the gunshot. After Daniel was shot, Lauren went upstairs to her daughter Bethany's sleeping room. Lauren shot her at point-blank range, instantly killing Bethany. Next, her son Stephen, who had his own house on the other side of town, Lauren tricked Stephen into coming to her house. When Stephen was busy with the task his mother had assigned him, his back turned, Lauren shot him at close range. The horror did not stop there. Lauren killed the family dog, placing its body in the bathtub. A neighbor heard these gunshots but thought someone was slamming the door. When the house became a cold morgue, Lauren meticulously cleaned it. Then Lauren used the gun to kill herself. Lauren's cousin, who had been trying to contact her, became concerned when she did not respond to their messages. The cousin decided to visit Lauren's home the following morning, February 16th, with a friend. When no one answered the door, they contacted the police. Upon arriving at the house, the police found the kitchen to be tidy and well organized, with a stocked refrigerator and handwritten labels on various items. A calendar was also hanging on the refrigerator. However, police discovered the family dog dead in the bathtub. This made police more cautious, initially fearing the possibility of an active shooter. As they continued to search the house, they found Stephen Stewart on the floor, shot while sitting on a chair in another room. In a bedroom, the police discovered Bethany's lifeless body, shot while she was asleep. A pillow had been used to muffle the sound of the gunshot, and the pillowcase showed signs of the shooting. The police also found Daniel Stewart's body on the basement floor in front of a couch, with his right hand still in his jeans pocket. Elsewhere in the house, Lauren was found at the foot of the stairs, with a pistol next to her and a gunshot wound between her eyes. 2 notes were discovered on the dining room table, one addressed to the medical examiner, the other a suicide note revealing Lauren's inner struggles. Lauren's note explained that she felt she had allowed evil into her heart by rejecting God's love. She believed that by killing her family, she could spare them from suffering. Through interviews with relatives, friends, and neighbors, it became clear that the couple had become reclusive after leaving the Jehovah's Witness church. Lauren's past struggles, particularly her battle with depression, were compounded by the stress of motherhood. Family members also revealed that Lauren, who was one of 11 siblings, had a history of depression that likely contributed to her actions. Lauren has become increasingly obsessed with her faith in recent years. Her family, including her father and sister, have not spoken to her in years. Lauren's mother died when she was 13. The tragic event has left a lasting impact on those close to the family. Joyce Taylor, a longtime friend, believes the murders were a direct result of the family's rejection by the Jehovah's Witnesses. Joyce Taylor and other former members reveal the harsh reality of leaving the faith. When someone leaves the Jehovah's Witnesses, they are often shunned by their own family members who remain in the church. This severe form of shunning can take a heavy emotional toll. According to Joyce Taylor, Lauren and Daniel's desire to give their children a college education conflicted with the church's teachings, which discouraged such pursuits. This clash between their aspirations and the church's rigid doctrines ultimately led to a tragic outcome. The family was shunned in every way possible. As Joyce Taylor explained, when you're raised a Jehovah's Witness, the church controls many aspects of your life, including your friendships and associations. If you go against these rules, you risk being disfellowshipped or shunned. Joyce Taylor stormed into a Kingdom Hall meeting in Union Lake, seizing the opportunity to confront the congregation about a recent tragedy. She passionately criticized the gathering, her voice filled with a mix of anger and sorrow. 5 years ago, you withdrew your support from a small family, Joyce Taylor exclaimed. They had no one else to turn to, but you turned them away and shunned them. Why? Because they wanted to raise their children as they saw fit. Just 2 days ago, 4 people died because of your alienation, Joyce Taylor said. Her words sent shockwaves through the room, forcing her to push away members of her congregation as she expressed her pent-up frustration. Police investigations into Lauren's family revealed that she, her husband, and her sons were all using cannabis. Further investigation revealed that Lauren's horrific actions were the result of a combination of factors. These included feelings of loneliness, strained relationships with family and friends due to their differing religious views. These factors combined to add to her pain, ultimately leading her to commit a horrific act. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Danielle Jennings. Danielle Jennings was born on September 16, 1978 in Columbia, South Carolina. She spent her childhood in Stockton, Georgia, with her mother and stepfather. As a cheerful and outgoing person, Danielle had to mature quickly when she became pregnant at 16. Despite her youth, she was confident in her ability to be a good mother. However, her relationship with Carl, the father of her child, didn't last, and they eventually broke up. In 1996, at the age of 17, Danielle gave birth to her son Tristan, becoming a single mother. Determined to provide the best life for herself and Tristan, Danielle met Luis, who became a father figure to her son. The two had known each other since their teenage years, initially as friends, but eventually became a couple. Danielle was overjoyed to have found happiness again, and Luis took care of both her and Tristan. They moved in together, and Danielle landed an office job at a landscaping company, which she was proud of. In December 1998, Luis popped the question, and Danielle was over the moon when she said yes. At this point, her life was going great. She had a fantastic son, a loving partner, and a career that was really taking off. But in a cruel twist of fate, everything took a devastating turn for the worse on March 15, 1999. Luis returned home from work to find Danielle unresponsive on the bed. Their son Tristan was at daycare that day. The color of Danielle's skin indicated to Luis that she had passed away, so he immediately called 911. The police arrived at the Ashley Lakes apartment complex in Norcross, Georgia, where the couple resided. Initially, the only information the authorities had was that a deceased woman was in the apartment and her fiancé had called the emergency services. This naturally raised the suspicions of the investigators, as it is not uncommon for a partner to be responsible for the death of their loved one. Luis was waiting for the police at the apartment entrance and informed them that the victim was 20-year-old Danielle Jennings. He told the police that when he returned home from work, he found Danielle lying face down on the bed, and upon turning her over, he realized she was dead and promptly called 911. The police took Luis in for questioning at the station, while the crime scene investigators carefully processed the area. Danielle was found lying on her back on the bed, fully clothed, with a ligature tightly wrapped around her neck. The ligature, which appeared to be a stocking, suggested that the perpetrator attacked her from behind. The bed was disheveled, and one of the dresser drawers was open, possibly indicating that the stocking was taken from it. The contents of Danielle's purse had been emptied and searched through, raising the possibility that the perpetrator's primary motive was theft. However, The fact that valuable items like cameras and jewelry were left untouched led the police to consider that the crime might have been committed to eliminate Danielle as a witness to a robbery. Alternatively, the crime scene could have been staged to mislead investigators, as there were no signs of forced entry on the front door or the sliding glass door to the backyard, which was locked. This lack of forced entry led investigators to suspect that Danielle might have let the perpetrator into her apartment or that they had access to keys. As a result, Luis became the prime suspect. During the questioning, Luis became very emotional. The investigators pointed out that romantic relationships can sometimes have tragic outcomes. They started by asking Luis about his movements on the day Danielle died. Luis said he was at work all day. He last saw Danielle when he left for work that morning. They both left their apartment at 6:45 a.m., but Danielle went back inside to grab something. Luis stated that Danielle was anxious about an important meeting with management that day and was worried about it, seeming a little distracted. Luis stated that Danielle phoned him around 11:30 a.m. to invite him to lunch, but he declined due to his heavy workload that prevented him from leaving his job. Later that day, Luis attempted to reach Danielle, but she was unresponsive. He then contacted her coworkers and discovered that she had gone out for lunch but failed to return. As Danielle also wasn't answering their home phone, Luis grew concerned and left work to check on her. Upon arriving at the Ashley Lakes apartments, he noticed that the front door was unlocked and slightly open, which filled him with apprehension. The police asked Luis about his relationship with Danielle, including whether they frequently argued or had family issues. Luis reported that they got along well and were deeply in love. He became distraught, arguing that the police were wasting their time by questioning him and should instead focus on finding the actual perpetrator, who was still at large. The detectives also spoke with Danielle's friends and family, all of whom were convinced that Luis was incapable of harming her. The couple had been planning their wedding and were still very much in love. Luis's coworkers confirmed that he had been at work all day, which verified his alibi and led to his removal from the list of suspects. During the interrogation, Luis stated that Danielle's coworker, Jeff, a middle-aged manager, had been paying her excessive attention, which made her uncomfortable. This was corroborated by her boss when investigators visited her workplace. According to her boss, Danielle had previously complained about Jeff's behavior, alleging that he constantly hovered around her, disrupted her work, and acted inappropriately. Despite their significant age difference, Jeff was 40 and Danielle was 20. Jeff invited Danielle to lunch, but she declined, citing her engagement to a man she loved. Jeff, however, refused to accept her rejection, suggesting that things would be different if he were 20 years younger. The company Danielle worked for took her complaints very seriously. On the day of her death, she had a meeting scheduled to discuss the complaint she had filed against Jeff, a manager at the company. Danielle was extremely anxious about this meeting, as she worried it could jeopardize her career, being a relatively new employee. Her coworkers stated that Danielle left for lunch after the meeting, but never came back, which provided investigators with a time frame for when the attack on Danielle likely occurred. The investigators' suspicions about Jeff grew when they discovered he was away from the office at the time of the crime. Furthermore, he didn't return to the office until evening. Was this merely a coincidence, or could Jeff have killed Danielle in revenge for her complaint? The investigators needed to find answers to these questions and began to focus on Jeff as a prime suspect. They explored the possibility that Jeff tailed Danielle home and attacked her when she opened the front door, which would explain the absence of forced entry. Jeff was summoned for questioning and asked to detail his relationship with Danielle. He acknowledged asking Danielle to lunch, but vigorously denied any role in her death. Although Jeff freely admitted having a liking for Danielle, he insisted he had never behaved improperly towards her and was taken aback when she lodged a complaint against him. When investigators suggested that Danielle's complaint might have motivated him to harm her, Jeff initially responded with indignation. He categorically denied being responsible for her death. Jeff claimed to have a solid alibi, stating that he spent the entire day with a colleague, driving around the city to resolve work-related issues. He provided the colleague's name, who corroborated his alibi, effectively ruling him out as a suspect. The next day, investigators reviewed the autopsy report, searching for clues to identify the killer. The report revealed that Danielle's cause of death was asphyxiation, suggesting she was caught off guard. The evidence indicated that someone had approached her from behind, pulled a stocking tight around her neck until she became unconscious, and then tied a knot to ensure she wouldn't regain consciousness. There were no signs of struggle or injury on her body, except for the ligature mark on her neck. It's possible Danielle never saw her attacker's face. Unfortunately, the crime scene yielded no useful evidence, including shoe prints, DNA, fingerprints, or hair, leaving the police with nothing to send to the laboratory for analysis. Since the police couldn't find any new leads, they went back to the original theory that the murder was a robbery gone wrong. They asked Luis to conduct a thorough search of the apartment with them once again. Luis carefully examined every room and insisted that nothing seemed to be out of place or missing. Everything was exactly where it should be. However, a few days later, Luis reached out to the police with a disturbing discovery. Danielle's wedding ring was nowhere to be found. Moreover, he pointed out another suspicious detail. The stocking used to strangle Danielle didn't belong to her. As Luis explained, Danielle never wore stockings, implying that the killer must have brought it with them. Without evidence, investigators turned their attention to Danielle's past, suspecting a connection between her previous relationships and what happened to her. They questioned her friends about her relationship with Carl, Tristan's father. Her best friend informed the police about Eddie, an ex-boyfriend from when Danielle was already pregnant. Eddie's behavior became increasingly violent and controlling as their relationship progressed, eventually forbidding her from seeing friends and family. After giving birth to Tristan, their relationship further deteriorated, with Eddie starting to use illegal substances. This led Danielle to end the relationship, moving out to start anew. However, Eddie refused to accept rejection, behaving erratically. Consequently, Danielle sought a restraining order, which Eddie repeatedly violated by calling her, parking near her home, and even showing up at her workplace. Danielle's family informed investigators that Eddie had been calling her multiple times in the recent months, insisting on meeting her, but she would always hang up on him. To the detectives, Eddie seemed like the perfect suspect, so they located him and brought him in for questioning. Eddie was hostile and resistant to going to the police station. When he spoke about Danielle, it was clear that it enraged him. When questioned about his relationship with Danielle, his account contradicted what her family members had said. He asserted that he had never been violent towards her and denied any involvement in her death, claiming he hadn't spoken to her in over a year. However, the investigators knew he was lying because they checked Danielle's call history, which revealed that Eddie had indeed been calling her in the months preceding her death. To determine Eddie's whereabouts during the attack on Danielle, the police investigated his alibi. Eddie claimed to have been working far away from the Ashley Lakes apartments at the time, driving out of state as a tow truck driver. His boss corroborated Eddie's story, providing motel and gas receipts that proved he was out of state on the day Danielle died. This new evidence led to yet another dead end for the investigators. Similarly, Carl, Tristan's father, was also cleared from the list of suspects. 3 days after Danielle's death, a crucial lead emerged that altered the investigation's course. While interviewing Ashley Lake's apartment's residents, the police spoke with a woman who shared a strange encounter that had taken place a week prior to Danielle's death. According to her, she was awakened one morning by a knock on the door. After getting out of bed to look through the peephole, she saw no one. She returned to bed, but about a minute later, she heard the front door slam shut. Feeling scared, she got out of bed again, only to find a maintenance man standing in her living room. He claimed to be there to fix something in her apartment. However, the woman felt uneasy because he seemed more interested in looking at her than doing his job. Although she didn't know his name, she provided the police with a detailed description of him. Management at Ashley Lake's apartments informed investigators about a separate incident involving another woman. This woman reported that a man she didn't know had entered her apartment, claiming he was there to perform maintenance and replace light bulbs. When she told him she didn't have any light bulbs that needed changing, he became flustered and said, "Maybe I have the wrong apartment," before leaving. At Ashley Lake's apartments, there were 2 maintenance specialists on staff, but only one of them matched the description provided by the 2 women, 42-year-old Calvin Oliver. When the investigator showed the women Oliver's photo, they both positively identified him. Notably, Oliver had only begun working at the complex in September 1998. Prior to Danielle's death, a total of 10 residents reported that items including cash, checks, jewelry, and computers had gone missing from their apartments. What's more, there was no evidence of forced entry on the front doors of these apartments. In fact, one of the residents even suspected that the perpetrator was a member of the staff. Calvin Oliver was a prime suspect in the apartment robbery cases due to his living in the same residential complex, allowing him to move around freely without raising any suspicions. Moreover, Oliver possessed a master key, granting him unrestricted access to all apartments. The investigators decided to probe into Oliver's potential connection to Danielle Jennings. It emerged that Oliver had performed some work in Danielle's apartment a couple of weeks prior to her death, making him a person of interest. Given his access to the apartment and knowledge of Danielle and her fiancé Luis's work schedules, it was possible that Oliver had entered their apartment undetected. Perhaps Danielle had returned home for lunch, only to find Oliver already inside her apartment. Investigators brought Calvin Oliver in for questioning, initially asking about the thefts that had prompted complaints from some residents of Ashley Lake's apartments. Oliver denied any involvement in these incidents. When questioned about Danielle Jennings, he claimed to be aware of what had happened to her, but insisted he didn't know her personally. The only admission he made was that he had done some work in her apartment. At that point, the police didn't have any concrete evidence linking Oliver to the crime. Before releasing him, they decided to run a check on Oliver in their database. The results were shocking. Oliver was found to have an outstanding warrant in another jurisdiction for failing to appear in court on a burglary charge. This charge was related to the theft of personal checks. Furthermore, Oliver had a long history of criminal activity, dating back to 1974. According to records from the Georgia Department of Correction, by the age of 18, Oliver had already been convicted of several serious crimes, including multiple residential burglaries, armed robbery, robbery using force, larceny, and forcing a woman into intimate contact at knife point. As a result, he spent most of his life behind bars. Oliver had a motive to harm Danielle if she caught him in her apartment, as he didn't want to go back to prison with an active warrant out for his arrest. After the police took him in, they had more time to investigate his possible role in her death. While looking into the thefts at Ashley Lake's apartments, the police got a search warrant for Oliver's apartment. Inside, they found stolen items belonging to other residents and, crucially, Danielle's wedding ring, which connected Oliver to her murder. 9 days following Danielle Jennings' death, Calvin Oliver was arrested and charged with first-degree murder and burglary. During the interrogation, investigators asked Oliver about the stolen wedding ring. He claimed that he had taken it about 3 weeks prior to her death. However, several witnesses contradicted his statement, reporting that they had seen the ring on Danielle's finger the day before her body was discovered. After being caught in this inconsistency, Oliver refused to cooperate and provide further information. At the trial, the prosecutor claimed that Oliver murdered Danielle when she came home unexpectedly and caught him in the act of stealing. Following a 5-day trial that concluded on October 13, 2000, the jury delivered a guilty verdict on all counts against Oliver. The court subsequently sentenced him to life imprisonment for Danielle Jennings' murder, plus an additional 20 years for the theft of her wedding ring. Danielle's mother and stepfather, Sherry and Philip Jennings, eventually gained custody of her son, Tristan. It was later revealed that the management of Ashley Lake's apartments knew about Oliver's criminal past, but failed to check his background thoroughly. They also didn't warn other residents when a series of thefts occurred. When this information became known, Danielle's family sued Ashley Lake's apartments. The Jennings family brought claims for negligent hiring and retention, failure to provide adequate security, and failure to warn residents, among other charges. They sought punitive damages. Following the trial, the jury returned a verdict in excess of $13 million for wrongful death and for pain and suffering. The jury also awarded $2.5 million in punitive damages, an amount later reduced to $250,000 based on the finding that there was no specific intent to harm. According to plaintiff attorneys, the complex's key policy was also flawed. Employees had access to residents' keys, and the lockbox containing the keys to the complex's 240 apartments was often left unsecured. Calvin Oliver is presently incarcerated and serving a life sentence. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today, we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Kira Steger. Kira Steger, a 30-year-old store clerk, worked at Delia's in the Mall of America. She was dedicated to her job and never missed a shift, so when she failed to show up for work on February 23, 2013, her coworkers became worried. They attempted to contact her, but she didn't respond to their calls or texts, prompting them to report her missing to the police. Born on November 19, 1982, in Des Plaines, Illinois, Kira was the daughter of Marcy and Jay Steger, who described her as lively, dedicated, and sweet. She had previously worked at Wet Seal before moving to Delia's, both located in the Mall of America. Kira's coworkers were not only her friends, but also part of her extended family. Kira had a unique gift for identifying people's hidden strengths, and she had planned a promising future for herself, one that seemed bright and serene. However, all her dreams came to an abrupt end when she mysteriously disappeared. On Thursday, February 21, 2013, Kira worked a shift. According to her coworkers, she was in high spirits and had plans to dine at a nice restaurant with her husband, Jeffrey Trevino, after her shift ended. The two had met 3 years prior and quickly developed a romantic connection, leading to their marriage. By all appearances, Kira and Jeffrey were a happy, stable married couple. However, when Kira failed to show up for work 2 days later, on Saturday, February 23rd, her co-workers were alarmed. This was unusual behavior for someone who was typically punctual, strict with herself and others, and adhered to her schedule. Unable to reach Kira, her co-workers contacted Jeffrey, but he claimed to have no knowledge of his wife's whereabouts. Jeffrey reported that Kira had left their house the previous morning and hadn't returned since. Although this wasn't entirely unusual, as Kira sometimes stayed away for a day or two at a friend's or relative's place without warning, the bad weather that day did raise some concerns. The heavy snowfall might have caused her to get stuck, and her cell phone battery could have run out. Still, with no news from Kira, Jeffrey filed a missing persons report and contacted her family that same day. Her family was shocked and devastated by her sudden disappearance. Detectives promptly began their investigation, a standard procedure in cases like this. They started by interviewing the spouse and searching the immediate area. The detectives went to Jeffrey's home to talk to him. Jeffrey told them that on Thursday, he and Kira had planned to spend some time together. They had dinner, chatted, went bowling, and eventually left the mall. According to Jeffrey, they went straight home, as Kira wanted to watch a movie. Jeffrey also informed the detectives that Kira left their house the next day, Friday, around 8:30 a.m., to attend a work event where her presence was required. He wasn't alarmed by her occasional disappearances, although he didn't know her whereabouts or who she was with, as this was not unusual behavior for her. Jeffrey revealed that he and his wife Kira had been experiencing relationship issues for a few months, but he didn't consider it a major concern, believing that all families have minor disagreements. When the detective asked if Kira might be staying with someone, suggesting she could have had an affair, Jeffrey dismissed the idea, stating that he had already asked Kira about it and she had denied it. Jeffrey emphasized that he genuinely loves and trusts his wife. The investigators shared the information they gathered about Kira and her car with the on-duty patrol units. The detectives also visited the Mall of America to verify the accuracy of Jeffrey's statement and potentially uncover more clues. Mall of America, one of the world's largest shopping malls, is located in Bloomington and boasts 520 stores, theme parks, an oceanarium, movie theaters, a golf course, and many other attractions. Given its massive size, it's no surprise that the mall is equipped with numerous security cameras. When the detectives reviewed the security footage from February 21st, they saw that Kira had left work at her usual time. The footage didn't show anything unusual, and Jeffrey's alibi checked out. He had met Kira after work, and they had spent some time together at the mall before heading to the parking lot and driving off. There was no sign of any argument between them, and it seemed like they had a normal evening. The waiting game was agonizing, and with each passing day, the anxiety about Kira's safety grew. With no news from her and exhausted from waiting, Kira's family decided to take matters into their own hands and traveled to Bloomington to assist with the investigation. They printed flyers with Kira's picture and posted them around town, handing them out to passers-by in an effort to draw attention to the search. They knew they couldn't just sit idle. They had to do everything possible to find their loved one. While Kira's family was distributing leaflets, investigators continued to question the couple's neighbors. They noticed a surveillance camera on one of the houses, which rotated sideways and captured Kira and Jeffrey's home. The officers asked the homeowner to provide a copy of the footage, hoping to find some clues. Meanwhile, records from Kira's cell phone company arrived, providing a new lead. According to the records, Kira had a relationship with Ryan Wendt, who was the manager of the store chain where she worked. They had an intense and frequent correspondence. The police discovered that Ryan had left the state around the same time Kira disappeared, and he was traveling in his car towards Colorado while a search for Kira was underway. Ryan became a key figure in the investigation, not only because of his romantic relationship with Kira, but also because he had left the state at the same time she vanished. Whether this was a coincidence or something more, the investigators needed to find out. Regardless, the detectives were able to get in touch with Ryan, and he agreed to be questioned in Colorado. During the questioning, he said that the last time he had contact with Kira was when he was driving through South Dakota, and they exchanged text messages. These messages were sent just before Kira vanished. The detectives examined the timing of the text messages and discovered that Kira was communicating with her new lover at the same time she was having dinner with her husband, Jeffrey. It was obvious from their conversation that Kira was growing more and more distant from Jeffrey. Ryan's phone was analyzed to track his location in relation to cell towers, and his credit card statements were reviewed. The evidence suggested he was out of state on the night in question and had no connection to Kira's disappearance. As a result, he was cleared and removed from the suspect list. An examination of the text message timestamps showed that Kira was still communicating with Ryan even after arriving home with her husband. However, their conversation ceased at 11:44 p.m., and Kira's phone has been inactive since then. Meanwhile, a different team of investigators prepared to analyze the video footage from the surveillance camera installed at Kira's neighbor's house. The camera captured a wide area of the street, panning left and right, but its rapid movement made observation challenging. Whenever an investigator thought they spotted something suspicious, the camera would quickly swing to the other side, making it hard to focus. As a result, Jeffrey and Kira's house was only visible for a brief few seconds, caught in a quick glimpse as the camera panned to the right. Jeffrey claimed that after dinner and bowling, he and Kira went home, watched a movie, and then went to bed. However, video footage showed that at around 2 a.m., Kira's car backed into their yard. Although the poor quality of the footage and the camera's constant motion made it difficult to determine exactly what was happening. The car soon drove away from their house. According to Jeffrey, he had driven Kira's car that night because she had asked him to fill up the gas tank before her commute the next day. Surprisingly, his alibi checked out, as he was indeed seen at the gas station around 3:30 in the morning. However, after leaving the gas station, he didn't return home, instead heading towards the highway. His destination remained unknown. The neighbor's camera did not capture Jeffrey's return home, but this does not necessarily mean he didn't come back. The camera was constantly rotating, so it's possible that it was facing the other direction when Jeffrey arrived. Upon closer examination of the footage, investigators noted that Kira's Chevrolet was seen driving away at 9:21 a.m. However, unfortunately, the footage did not provide a clear view of who was driving the vehicle. A police report was filed on Saturday, February 23rd, after Kira was reported missing. On Monday, February 25th, the police received a call about a suspicious vehicle found near the shopping center where Kira worked. The vehicle was parked in one of the two multi-story parking lots, and security guards had noticed it had been there for several days. They requested a truck to remove it. The tow truck driver proceeded to examine the car before picking it up and spotted suspicious-looking red smudges on the trunk lid, then called the police. That vehicle turned out to be Kira's white Chevy. There wasn't that much blood, just a few small stains, but it was there, and that was a very bad sign. Kira's purse was found in her abandoned car, containing divorce court forms that appeared to have been downloaded from the internet. Behind the car, a small, dark item lying in the snow caught the investigators' attention. Upon closer inspection, they discovered a rolled-up trunk mat with dark-colored stains on the reverse side. DNA testing confirmed that the stains were Kira Steger's blood. With a heavy heart, the investigators realized that Kira was likely deceased. This devastating discovery was a cruel shock to her family and friends, who had lost their last hope of seeing her again. Many questions now plagued their minds. How did Kira die? Did she suffer? And who could have harbored such resentment towards her as to take her life? The absence of Kira's body only added to their anguish, making it even harder to come to terms with their sorrow. The detectives' primary focus shifted to identifying the individual who abandoned the vehicle in the parking lot. After leaving the house at 9:21 a.m., the car was captured on camera at the mall approximately 20 minutes later. Although there were no cameras in the lot where the car was found, a nearby camera monitored the path leading to it. Upon reviewing the footage, detectives noticed a hooded man appearing in the video a few minutes after the white Chevrolet entered the parking lot. Given the cold weather, the hoodie didn't seem unusual, but the detectives wanted to track his movements. The footage showed the hooded man crossing the street, engaging in a brief conversation with a taxi driver at the stand, and then getting into the taxi and driving away. The police easily identified the company that owned the taxis parked in the shopping center's parking lot. By analyzing the time the hooded man interacted with the driver, they quickly determined the license plate number of the specific vehicle involved. Since all the cabs were equipped with GPS tracking devices, the police were able to trace the hooded man's journey, which ended a block away from Kira and Jeffrey's house. He got out of the car after paying cash, and the taxi left the neighborhood. The same camera that had previously recorded part of Kira and Jeffrey's home caught a cab on film. 2 minutes into the footage, a man wearing a hooded sweatshirt with a distinctive white logo entered the frame. Although the low-quality footage made it difficult to make out his face, the logo on his hoodie stood out. As the investigators continued to review the footage, they saw the hooded man walk into the house where Kira and Jeffrey lived. Given that Kira was missing, it was highly likely that the hooded man was Jeffrey. After obtaining a search warrant, law enforcement officers went to the house. At first, the house seemed ordinary and unremarkable, but a closer inspection revealed a more sinister scene. In the bedroom, the criminalists found dark red stains on the wall beside the bed and around 100 similar stains on the mattress. It was clear that the room had been recently rearranged and cleaned in an attempt to conceal evidence. When the forensics team used luminol on the floor carpet, it revealed a significant amount of blood stains that were not visible to the naked eye. These stains started in the bedroom and continued to the other side of the house. The forensic analysis confirmed that the blood belonged to Kira, which further led investigators to believe that she was no longer alive. In addition to searching the interior of the house, the police also inspected Jeffrey's car. Although they didn't find any blood or signs of a struggle inside the vehicle, they did discover something noteworthy. A gas station receipt was found in the car, which showed that the purchase was made an hour and 40 minutes before Kira's car was abandoned in the mall parking lot, and the payment was made using Jeffrey's card. The detectives then went to the gas station to review the security footage. The footage showed Jeffrey filling up his car and then going inside to withdraw cash from an ATM. This video provided a clear view of Jeffrey's face and revealed a logo on his jacket, similar to the one seen on the man in the earlier footage, located in the chest area. Based on this recording and all evidence found in the house, 39-year-old Jeffrey Trevino was arrested. He was taken to the station for questioning and became the main and only suspect. From the interrogation room, Jeffrey contacted his attorney, who advised him to exercise his right to remain silent. Although the police had sufficient evidence to charge him, the most crucial evidence of his guilt would be Kira's body. There was no doubt that Kira was dead. The police, along with Kira's family and volunteers, spent months searching for her. In late March, as the snowdrifts began to clear, a strange bag was discovered by volunteers near the roadside at Keller Lake, which is just a few miles from Trevino's house. The police were called, and upon inspection, the bag was found to contain a bloodied pillow, a shirt, and a bra. The forensics team was able to link the discovery to Kira, as her DNA was detected on the items. Although the lake was still partially frozen, which made searching it difficult, divers were able to survey the water body. However, they did not find any remains in the lake. The area surrounding the lake was thoroughly searched multiple times using 4 trained search dogs, but no evidence of Kira's whereabouts was found. Over 2 months later, on May 8, 2013, the St. Paul Police Department received a chilling call. The caller reported seeing what appeared to be a dead body in the Mississippi River. The body retrieved by police from the water was confirmed to be Kira Steger. The autopsy revealed that she had suffered severe, blunt force trauma to her forehead and a fractured left index finger. Due to the advanced state of decomposition, the medical examiners could not determine the exact cause of death. Investigators worked to piece together the events leading up to Kira's death and its aftermath. Their theory was that upon returning home, Jeffrey discovered Kira texting someone else. When she refused to show him the messages, he forcibly took her phone, breaking her finger in the process. Enraged by the romantic exchange, Jeffrey allegedly snapped, taking Kira's life and then attempting to conceal the evidence of his crime. Jeffrey drove Kira's car to their house, put Kira's body in the trunk, then stopped at a gas station before driving to the river, where he got rid of the body. Afterwards, he drove back home, throwing away the bag containing Kira's pillow and clothes on the way. The next morning, he went to another gas station, withdrew cash from an ATM, knowing he would need it to pay for a taxi after leaving Kira's car in the mall's parking lot. In October 2013, a jury found 39-year-old Jeffrey Trevino guilty, ruling that his actions were not premeditated and that the crime resulted from a sudden and intense argument sparked by Kira's infidelity. Before the sentence was announced, Kira's family expressed their grief and outrage, with her sister calling Trevino a calculating criminal who didn't deserve mercy, and her mother saying he had callously dumped her daughter's body into the country's most polluted waterway. In November 2013, Jeffrey Trevino received a 27.5-year prison sentence, becoming eligible for parole in 2031. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Michelle Davis. Michelle Ann Cosner Davis was born in Iowa on December 15, 1966. By 2008, at 41 years old, she lived in Des Moines with her 3 kids. Her divorce was nearly finalized and she was eager to start anew. Michelle had already taken steps towards independence, moving into her own apartment and obtaining a restraining order against her husband, Randy Davis. The years leading up to the divorce had been marked by tension and strain within the family. Michelle was a friendly and adventurous person who had a passion for motorcycles. At her job as a secretary for a trucking company, she was well respected and commanded authority. On Thursday, September 11, 2008, Michelle was at work, and her co-workers noticed a significant change in her demeanor after her husband left her. She seemed to have shed a burden that had been weighing her down for years. In a good mood, Michelle wrapped up all her tasks and left the office around 4:30 p.m. After a short time, eyewitnesses started calling 911 to report a serious accident on Interstate 235. They told the operator that a Mercury Sable car had flipped over and a woman was still strapped into the driver's seat with her seatbelt. Tragically, the woman was unconscious, and despite the efforts of the paramedics who arrived at the scene, she could not be saved. The woman who lost her life was identified as Michelle Davis. After arriving at the accident scene, the police initially concluded that Michelle lost control of her vehicle, leading to the crash. However, they reversed this theory just a day later. Forensic experts subsequently determined that Michelle's death was not caused by a head injury sustained during the rollover, but rather by a gunshot wound to the head. The bullet was extracted and sent for analysis, with the hope of tracing the perpetrator. The investigators on this case were dealing with something entirely unprecedented. As they awaited the ballistic examination results, local authorities took proactive measures to safeguard the public. They considered the possibility that Michelle might have been a random target, not premeditated. This raised the alarming prospect of a shooter who wouldn't stop at just one victim. Given the high volume of traffic on the interstate, any driver could potentially become the next target for the unstable perpetrator. It was essential to crack the case quickly, and so the police increased their patrols throughout the city. When detectives realized Michelle's death was not an accident, they revisited the crime scene to try to determine the shooter's whereabouts and if they had left any clues behind. Unfortunately, their efforts yielded nothing. The police failed to recover the cartridge case or any other evidence that could aid the investigation. To make matters worse, the initial assumption that Michelle was a car accident victim led the traffic services to clear the site, which meant that even if there were any evidence, it was likely destroyed and irretrievable by the time the truth came to light. Despite these setbacks, the detectives didn't give up and pinned their hopes on reviewing the traffic camera recordings. These days, CCTV cameras often prove instrumental in helping the police crack cases, and this one was no exception. With the traffic camera recordings at their disposal, the investigators dove right in. First, they needed to locate the recording from the camera nearest the crime scene and rewind it to when the 911 calls started coming in. Half an hour later, the investigators finally found what they were looking for. The video showed Michelle's car upside down, but the footage was poor quality, resembling a slideshow with separate alternating pictures and intervals in between. As a result, the investigators only had a few usable shots, none of which revealed what led to Michelle's car rolling over. This was a disappointing development, as the investigators thought they had finally stumbled upon a crucial clue, only to be left with false hopes. The police still needed to review the remaining camera recordings and search for potential eyewitnesses. Meanwhile, the investigator handling the Michelle Davis case visited her family to break the news that her death was not an accident, as initially thought. This revelation left Michelle's family in shock. Michelle's mother, Patty, had passed away before her. Her father, Michael Lee Cosner, was now grieving the loss of his second daughter. His first daughter, Cheryl Sue Cosner, Michelle's older sister, died in 1965 at just 1 year old. 43 years later, Michael Cosner was facing the unbearable loss of another child. Losing one's children is the ultimate tragedy for any parent. Michelle's family informed the investigator that she had been going through a series of changes in her life, but they did not think she had any financial issues. However, they suspected that the one person who could potentially harm Michelle was her estranged husband, Randy Davis, particularly since their divorce was nearly finalized, and she had obtained a restraining order against him. Meanwhile, another detective interviewed Michelle's colleagues at her workplace and discovered that she was having a close relationship with a coworker named Matt Jorgensen, following her separation from her husband. According to Michelle's friend, the feelings between Michelle and Matt were mutual. Since Michelle was still in the process of divorcing Randy Davis, she and Matt decided to keep their relationship private, only sharing it with a select few colleagues and close friends. The police now had two potential suspects in their investigation, Randy Davis and Matt Jorgensen. However, all attempts to contact Randy were met with failure, as every time they called him, the call went straight to voicemail. On the other hand, the investigators were able to meet with Matt, where they questioned him about his whereabouts on the day Michelle died. Matt was cooperative, openly admitting to having had a romantic relationship with Michelle. He claimed that they never had any arguments or fights. Matt was visibly shaken by Michelle's death and provided every detail of his activities on the day she died. After verifying his alibi, the police were able to eliminate him as a suspect. The ballistic examination results revealed that the crime was committed with a .22 caliber rifle. According to experts, the shot was fired at close range. Given that the incident occurred while Michelle was driving on the interstate, police suspected that the shooter was likely in another vehicle that was driving alongside Michelle's car. At the same time, a new suspect emerged in the case. The police received a tip-off from an insurance company claiming that Michelle's brother, Todd, was seeking payment under her life insurance policy. While insurance-related murders aren't rare, the question was whether this case fit the pattern. Could Todd have killed his sister for the payout? To investigate, the detective visited Todd's house to ask some questions. As the detective pressed Todd about his whereabouts at the time of Michelle's death, it dawned on Todd that he was a suspect. Todd recounted his activities on the day his sister died. He explained that their family was struggling financially and couldn't afford a decent funeral, which is why he contacted the insurance company. He needed the money for Michelle's funeral expenses. The police verified Todd's alibi and discovered that he was in a different part of the city when Michelle died, ruling him out as the shooter. However, Todd still gave the police information that allowed them to find another suspect, Michelle's stepson, Josh. When Michelle married Randy, he already had a son from a previous marriage. At the time of Michelle's death, Josh was already an adult. He was a Marine who returned home from the Army shortly before someone fatally wounded Michelle on the road. Josh knew how to handle weapons, which made him one of the suspects. The police started analyzing whether Josh had motives for committing this crime. The police received a new lead when a woman reported seeing a suspicious vehicle on Interstate 235 at the same time Michelle's car crashed. She described the vehicle as a red Ford F-150 pickup truck, driven erratically, swerving between lanes, as if the driver was chasing someone. The driver was an adult white male wearing a baseball cap, but the woman couldn't provide any additional details. The new information appeared significant, so the investigators decided to investigate further. They re-examined the traffic camera footage, this time focusing on whether a red pickup truck was in the vicinity. The woman's tip proved accurate. The footage showed a red pickup truck tailing Michelle from her workplace. However, the poor video quality prevented the police from identifying the driver's face or the truck's license plates. After reviewing additional camera recordings, the investigators determined that the red pickup truck had been following Michelle's exact route, mirroring her every move. The similarity was unlikely to be a coincidence. Furthermore, as Michelle approached the location of her death, the pickup truck was hot on her heels. This evidence hinted that the perpetrator may have fired the fatal shot while driving, and several suspects were being considered. Detectives quickly learned that Randy Davis, Michelle's husband, owned a red pickup truck that matched the description of the one seen near the crime scene. They immediately went to his house to investigate. Although Randy was not at home, his son Josh, a Marine with professional weapons training, was present. Josh told detectives that on the day of Michelle's death, he and his sister had gone shopping, returned home, and spent the evening watching TV. He also mentioned that his father, Randy, arrived home around 5:30 p.m. that day. However, detectives found Josh's alibi unconvincing and suspected that he might have a motive for the crime. Michelle's decision to pursue half the house value in the divorce proceedings had likely upset Josh, who stood to lose a portion of his inheritance. While these suspicions seemed plausible, there was no physical evidence to support them, and without evidence, an arrest and charges were impossible. While Michelle's family was preparing for her funeral, the police were actively searching for new leads in the case. They visited all the shops and gas stations along the route from her workplace to the location where her body was found, hoping to obtain additional surveillance footage. A few miles from the company where Michelle worked, the police discovered crucial footage at a store that proved to be a significant breakthrough. The store's surveillance camera had captured part of the parking lot, and on the day of Michelle's death, September 11, 2008, it showed a red pickup truck belonging to Randy Davis parking at the entrance around 4 p.m. Although the footage revealed the driver getting out of the truck and entering the store, the poor quality made it impossible for investigators to determine whether the driver was Randy or his son Josh. Further analysis of the footage revealed that over the next 30 minutes, the pickup truck returned to the store several times, but the driver remained in the vehicle. The last time the pickup truck was seen near the store was when Michelle left work, which raised even more questions for the investigators. The police, unable to identify a suspect, reached out to Randy Davis, who eventually made contact and came to the police station. There, the investigators informed him of his rights and asked about his activities on September 11th. Randy mentioned his difficult divorce from Michelle, his wife of 17 years, and claimed to have been at work that day. When questioned about his arrival time at home, Randy hesitated before stating he got home at 3:45 p.m., which contradicted the surveillance footage and his son Josh's testimony, who said his father arrived around 5:30 p.m. The investigators then revealed to Randy that Michelle had died from a gunshot wound, not a car crash, information that had not been previously disclosed. Randy showed little reaction to this news, and when the police asked when he last saw Michelle, he requested a lawyer, ending the conversation. Due to the lack of significant evidence, including the murder weapon, the investigation had no choice but to release him. On September 15, 2008, 4 days after Michelle's death, her family and friends, including Randy Davis, gathered for her funeral. Randy tried to show that her death was a heavy loss for him, even bursting into tears at some point. Help arrived from an unexpected quarter when Josh Davis walked into the police station, accompanied by his lawyer, and expressed his desire to make a statement. Josh claimed that upon returning home from his sister's house, he found his father Randy waiting for him, holding a gun. Randy warned Josh that it would be better for him to stay back, and Josh grasped the implication that his father was trying to prevent him from entering the house, but ultimately failed to do so. Randy drove into the garage and confessed to Josh that he had shot Michelle. He was upset because his wife was filing for divorce and suing him for part of their property, which he refused to accept. On September 11, 2008, Randy took drastic action. He parked his red pickup truck outside the store where Michelle worked and waited for her to leave. Randy drove past the store multiple times, worried that he might miss his opportunity. This is why he appeared on the store's CCTV footage several times after Michelle left work. Eventually, he followed her and waited for the perfect moment to strike. When the time came, he rolled down the passenger side window and fired. Based on Josh's testimony, the police arrested Randy Davis for the murder of Michelle, and he was initially charged with first-degree murder. However, prior to the trial, Randy pleaded guilty to the lesser charge of second-degree deprivation of life in exchange for a shorter sentence. As a result, in 2010, Randy Davis, then 53 years old, was sentenced to 50 years in prison. By pleading guilty, Randy avoided a trial. Michelle's brother, Todd Kozner, expressed mixed emotions about the outcome. While we may not have received full justice without a trial, we did get what we wanted, an admission of guilt from Randy, Todd said. He emphasized the devastating impact Randy's actions had on their family. Randy was like family to me for 17 years, and I cared deeply for him. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Emmett Corrigan. Ashley Harmon, a bright and energetic person, became a caretaker for her 5 siblings after her parents' divorce at age 9. Her strong faith as a devout Mormon gave her strength and comfort in tough times, helping her overcome obstacles with determination and courage. In 2003, Ashley, a human development major, met Emmett Corrigan, a philosophy student, while attending Utah State. Like Ashley, Emmett's parents divorced when he was 10, and he had a tough time coping with the aftermath. However, he eventually found comfort in the Mormon faith. Although Emmett wasn't born into the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, he converted to the church at 17 in a ceremony attended by his family and friends. Ashley initially thought Emmett was cute, and he felt the same way about her. Emmett was impressed by Ashley's intelligence and was immediately smitten with her from the moment they met. In fact, he confided in his closest friends that he knew Ashley was the one he wanted to marry. Emmett proposed to Ashley at Christmas 2008, and she happily accepted. They married in a Mormon temple, surrounded by shared beliefs. Overjoyed, they started their new life, finding stability and happiness in their union. In Mormonism, marriage is sacred and eternal, lasting beyond death, with divorce only allowed in extreme cases. Ashley and Emmett welcomed twin daughters in 2005, feeling overjoyed and thrilled to experience parenthood. While attending Utah State University, they balanced childcare and education, relying on faith and love to overcome challenges. Emmett graduated from Utah State University with honors in 2009, attended law school and passed the bar, becoming a bankruptcy attorney. Meanwhile, Ashley stayed home to care for their 4 kids, managing the household while Emmett built his career. Behind closed doors, their seemingly perfect life hid secrets. In August 2010, Emmett faced increasing pressure to provide for his family of 4 young children, all under the age of 5, as the financial burden became overwhelming. To improve his financial situation, Emmett decided to establish his own criminal defense law firm. A friend introduced him to Candy Hall, a reputable paralegal with prior experience working for a criminal attorney. Following a successful lunch meeting, Emmett hired Candy as an assistant for his criminal defense firm. Candy Hall's husband was not in the story. It was Robert Hall, the Emmett, who was a great dad and worker. When his wife, Ashley, got a job, he was thrilled. But as his business and family responsibilities grew, Ashley noticed a strain on their marriage. Robert coped with the pressure by working out excessively, often at inconvenient times, leaving Ashley to care for their 4 kids alone. On January 15, 2011, Ashley and Emmett had their 5th child, a son, despite their growing distance. However, Emmett's behavior towards their newborn was different from how he had behaved with their other children. Instead of being attentive, he started spending more and more time away, sometimes staying out overnight. Ashley confided in her sister that she was worried about Emmett's actions and suspected he might be cheating on her. Around the same time, Emmett's assistant, Candy Hall, was experiencing her own marital problems. She told a friend that her husband, Rob, was jealous of her working for the charismatic Emmett, and their constant fights were affecting their marriage. On their 7th wedding anniversary, March 6, 2011, Ashley was left alone with the children while Emmett claimed he was attending a bodybuilding convention. Ashley felt panicked and concerned about her marriage, wondering if she was doing something wrong that made Emmett unhappy. Although she was unhappy, Ashley was determined to work through their problems and make their marriage better, as divorce was not an option for her. Ashley decided to tackle the issue head-on. She planned a perfect evening to mend her relationship with Emmett, cooking his favorite meal and ensuring the kids were on their best behavior. But when he arrived 2 hours late, he turned away from her kiss. Undeterred, Ashley remained steadfast in her goal to rekindle their love, believing it was worth trying to. 2 hours after Ashley finished preparing dinner, the Corrigan family gathered around the table to eat. However, Emmett claimed he wasn't hungry, despite Ashley's obvious effort and attention to detail. It was clear she had invested a lot of time, thought, and love into the meal, but Emmett's lack of interest left Ashley feeling disappointed and hurt. As the rest of the family enjoyed their meal, Emmett suddenly got up, saying he needed to go to Walgreens. He promised to be right back, seeming not to notice Ashley's growing concern. Ashley suspected there was more to Emmett's actions and begged him to stay and connect with her, reminding him of their family's importance. However, Emmett responded harshly, telling Ashley not to dictate what he did. He then left the house, leaving Ashley feeling confused and hurt. On the same day, another issue was emerging in Emmett's life. His assistant Candy and her husband Rob Hall were at a crisis point in their marriage. Despite their love for each other, Rob was packing his belongings, deciding to leave their home, believing it was best to distance himself and start fresh. That evening, Rob phoned his daughter to ask if she was out driving Candy's car. She told him she wasn't. A few minutes later, his daughter drove past Walgreens and spotted Candy's car in the parking lot, but thought little of it. She immediately called her father to report her discovery. Rob's initial reaction was a casual, "Oh, okay." Little did they realize that this ordinary phone call was about to drastically change the course of 2 families' lives forever. Meanwhile, Ashley lay in bed, her heart heavy with worry, praying fervently for her marriage to succeed. She had been texting and calling Emmett desperately, trying to reach him, but he wasn't responding. Her intuition told her something was wrong, and she couldn't shake off a sense of unease. Around 1 p.m., a 911 call reported gunshots and a screaming woman in the Walgreens parking lot, prompting a rapid police response. As they arrived at the scene, officers were uncertain about what they would find. Had there been a random drive-by shooting, a botched drug deal, a robbery, or something entirely different? Without knowing what to expect, they approached the area with caution. When the first officer stepped out of the patrol car, he was met with a horrific scene. A lifeless body lay on the ground, and a second person, wounded and in agony, was clutching their head. The injured person was rushed to the hospital with a gunshot wound, leaving the police with more questions than answers. Amidst the chaos, one key witness caught the police's attention. Her name was Candy Hall, and she was present at the crime scene. At the hospital, Candy identified the injured man as her husband, Rob, and the deceased man as her boss, Emmett. The autopsy revealed that Emmett had been shot twice, once in the head and once in the chest. Shortly after Emmett's lifeless body was discovered in the Walgreens parking lot, his wife Ashley received a knock on her front door. When she answered, she was greeted by police officers who broke the devastating news. Her husband, Emmett, had been shot and killed. Ashley was left stunned, inconsolable, and bewildered, struggling to comprehend what could have led to this tragic event. After the police informed Ashley that her husband had been killed, a detective asked her about Rob and Candy Hall. Ashley knew Candy as Emmett's assistant, but she suspected that Candy and Emmett were having an affair. The police took Candy in for questioning from the Walgreens parking lot, trying to piece together what led to Emmett's murder and Rob being shot in the head. When detectives asked Candy if she had a romantic relationship with her boss Emmett, she denied it. They also asked if they had ever had sex, and Candy strongly denied that too. Candy told the detectives that she had gone to Walgreens that night to pick up a prescription. She claimed to have run into Emmett by chance in the store, and they decided to go for a drive in his car. As they drove to a gas station, Candy's phone rang. It was her estranged husband, Rob. Candy told Rob that she was out with Emmett, but the conversation turned sour when Rob became jealous and threatened to hurt Emmett. At long last, Candy and Emmett pulled up to Walgreens. As they got out of the car, Candy's heart sank when she saw Rob standing at the entrance, his face red with anger. The air was electric with tension as a fierce argument broke out between Rob and Emmett, which quickly escalated into a physical fight. Just as suddenly, 3 loud gunshots rang out. Candy spun around to see both men lying on the ground. She quickly spotted the gun lying nearby, picked it up, and flung it away from herself. Candy couldn't identify who fired the first shot. Rob was shot in the head, stitched up, and questioned by detectives. They found his gun at the scene and asked who it belonged to. Rob said it was his, explaining Emmett and he fought in a parking lot. The gun fell, they struggled, Emmett shot Rob, and Rob couldn't recall who fired the fatal shot due to his wound. Detectives wondered if Emmett might have fired first, since he ended up dead. Since the shooting took place in the Walgreens parking lot, the detectives turned to the security footage for answers. Upon reviewing the footage, they noticed Rob Hall arriving in the parking lot at 9:55 p.m. 1 minute later, Rob was seen entering the Walgreens store, seemingly searching for someone as he rushed through each aisle. The security footage captured Rob exiting the Walgreens at 10:06 p.m. and parking his car beside Candy's vehicle. He then waited there for the next few minutes. Approximately 10 minutes later, Emmett's truck appeared on the footage as it pulled into the parking lot. However, the shooting itself was not caught on camera. Candy initially denied being romantically involved with her boss, but rumors among their co-workers suggested otherwise. According to their co-workers, Candy and Rob were seen frequently spending time together in his office with the door closed, just 3 weeks after she was hired. On the day Emmett was shot, detectives made a curious discovery. Emmett had accompanied Candy to the public defender's office to discuss divorcing Rob. During the investigation into Emmett Corrigan's murder, crime scene investigators searched his vehicle in the parking lot and found steroids in the glove compartment. This discovery wasn't a surprise to many of Emmett's loved ones, as he had been heavily focused on bodybuilding and his behavior had changed, leading some to suspect he was using steroids. When Candy gave her statement to the detectives, she described a specific pattern of shots that suggested Rob shot and killed Emmett twice before turning the gun on himself and shooting himself in the head. This evidence was enough for the detectives to obtain an arrest warrant for Rob Hall, charging him with first-degree murder. As a result, Rob Hall was arrested and charged with Emmett Corrigan's murder. Rob Hall faced severe consequences for his actions. A conviction for first-degree murder would have resulted in either life imprisonment without parole or the death penalty. When Rob Hall went on trial for the murder of Emmett Ashley, Emmett's widow hoped the trial would bring her some closure and help her grieve. She believed that understanding her husband's affair and death would provide her with a sense of closure. According to the prosecution, Rob was enraged by Emmett's affair with his wife Candy and blamed him for ruining his marriage. They claimed that Rob shot Emmett and then attempted to take his own life. However, Rob's defense team presented a different account. They argued that Emmett was the aggressor on the night of his death and had a history of abusing steroids. The defense alleged that during the altercation, Emmett grabbed Rob's gun, shot Rob, and then Rob regained control of the weapon and killed Emmett in self-defense. Candy Hall, the wife of Rob Hall, was a key witness in his trial. Her testimony during the trial differed slightly from the account she provided to the police on the night of Emmett's death. On the witness stand, Candy claimed to have heard a distinct sequence of shots, stating that there was an initial pop, followed by 2 more quick pops. This revised account supported the defense's argument, which suggested that Emmett had shot Rob Hall first, before Rob managed to regain control of the gun and shoot Emmett twice, resulting in his death. Prosecutors needed to prove Rob, not Emmett, was the Walgreens shooter. They presented forensic evidence that the murder weapon leaves significant gunshot residue, GSR, after firing. Tests showed Rob had 32 GSR particles on his left palm and 23 on his right, while Emmett had 1 on his left hand and none on his right, proving Rob fired the gun. After careful consideration, the jury found Rob Hall not guilty of first-degree murder. However, they did reach a unanimous decision that he was guilty of second-degree murder, meaning the murder was not premeditated. The judge presiding over the case sentenced Rob to 30 years in prison, and he will be eligible for parole in 2028 when he is 58 years old. Despite being convicted, Rob has consistently claimed innocence and appealed his conviction in 2021. However, the Idaho Supreme Court upheld his conviction, denying him a retrial. 2 months after Emmett's murder, Candy Hall was arrested and charged with embezzlement for allegedly stealing from her previous employer, an attorney. These embezzlement charges were unrelated to Emmett's murder. Instead of facing the original embezzlement allegations, Candy pleaded guilty to the lesser charge of grand theft and received a prison sentence. She was released on parole in 2014, but remains on probation until 2026. Candy Hall spoke candidly on Dateline, overcome with guilt about the incident's harm to her relationships with her kids. She's unsure how to move forward, hoping to prove to them it was a regrettable mistake. Ashley's life was shattered when her husband Emmett was murdered by his lover's husband. She bravely confronted Emmett's lover on Dr. Phil in 2015. Refusing to be defined by grief, Ashley rebuilt her life by leaving the past behind and starting anew. She moved to a new town, and her 5 kids slowly rediscovered happiness. Ashley found love again, remarried, and had 2 more kids. Now she uses her blog to support others who've endured trauma. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Anna Repkina. On April 17, 2017, a caretaker named Russell found a dead body in the Oregon forest. The woman was Anna Repkina, a Russian native who had been shot in the head and had various trash around her body. Russell reported the discovery to the police. Anna Alexieva Repkina, from Chelyabinsk, Russia, came from a respectable family. She was intelligent, hardworking, and had a passion for travel, rock music, cats, and capturing memories through photography. Anna valued love and longed to be loved in return. She aspired to get married, have children, and build a family home. Those who knew her still cherish the memory of her infectious sense of humor, which made her a joy to be around. In 2016, Anna's 7-year relationship with her high school sweetheart came to an end, leaving her heartbroken. However, she refused to give up on her dreams of finding true love. With online dating becoming increasingly popular, Anna decided to take a chance and signed up for several websites. It was on a Russian dating site that she matched with someone who seemed to fit her ideal perfectly. His name was William Hargrove, a 26-year-old from Oregon who worked as a bouncer and mechanic. Interestingly, William had a strong affinity for Russian culture, and he claimed to have fallen for Anna as well. William treated Anna with kindness, frequently praising her. Despite being physically distant, he made an effort to be emotionally present when she needed him. His friends described him as a charismatic, passionate, and likable individual with a great sense of humor. He was a driven person who inspired those around him to pursue their goals. According to his former roommate, William had a remarkable ability to talk his way in or out of any situation. Anna and William communicated daily, and their online relationship rapidly became serious over a few months. They seemed destined to be together, sharing a deep connection. Their common interests, such as enjoying live music and having a similar sense of humor, made them a perfect match, as observed by their friends. Anna and William were very compatible. William was extremely sweet. Despite being separated by continents, he would frequently send her flowers. Soon, they started discussing meeting in person. In December 2016, they decided to take their months-old relationship to the next level. Anna booked a flight to Oregon to see William. However, Anna made a mistake on her first attempt. She accidentally booked a ticket for Portland, Maine, instead of Portland, Oregon. By the time she realized her error, she had already flown to Maine. Still, she was determined to spend the Christmas holidays with her boyfriend. She corrected her flight issues and arrived in Oregon on time. William picked her up from the airport. Anna and William shared 10 wonderful days together. He took her on guided tours, and they explored the seaside, played in the snow, and snuggled up by the fireplace. He introduced her to his friends, making their time together even more special. As the clock struck midnight on New Year's Eve, they joyfully shouted, "Happy New Year," and shared a romantic kiss. For both of them, it was the perfect Christmas, and they both felt they were meant to be together. After Anna's 10-day visit came to an end, William proposed to her with his grandmother's emerald ring, and she happily accepted. From that moment on, the two were engaged. However, what Anna was unaware of was that William had been unfaithful to her. He had been secretly involved with Michelle Chavez, his 33-year-old landlady, who was already married with 2 children. William had been renting a room in Michelle's home, and their affair had been ongoing for over a year, even before Anna's visit. In reality, Anna had unknowingly met Michelle, who was posing as William's landlady, and was in fact William's romantic rival. Michelle was aware that her boyfriend, William, had brought his girlfriend, Anna, to her home. She didn't confront them, possibly thinking that William would never leave her or that Anna was insignificant, just like her own husband. Whatever her reason, she kept quiet. However, things became clearer when Michelle discovered the engagement ring. Anna, thrilled with the news, posted a picture of her ring on Facebook. The post appeared on Michelle's homepage, thanks to the algorithm. Michelle was furious, not just because William was engaged to another woman, but because she had planned to leave her husband for him. In a bold move, Michelle took off her wedding ring and handed it to William. The ring was identical to Anna's engagement ring. It was the same one William had recycled. Michelle expressed her anger to William, who repeatedly assured her that Anna meant nothing to him and that he would break off the engagement on March 1st, 2017. Meanwhile, Anna returned to Oregon, preparation in full swing. She had packed her wedding dress in a suitcase and had even resigned from her job, ready to start a new life with her fiancé, William. Michelle grew concerned about the seriousness of Anna and William's relationship, so she decided to intervene. One day, she reached out to Anna on Facebook and revealed everything that had been going on. Anna then reported back to William about the conversation with Michelle. However, William dismissed Michelle's concerns, attributing them to jealousy as his ex. Despite this, the couple was determined to move forward with their plans, ignoring Michelle's warnings. They proceeded to schedule their wedding for March 23rd, planning to exchange vows by the seaside. Anna wore the wedding dress she had brought from Russia, and they headed to the beach for the ceremony. However, the officiant failed to show up. After waiting for what felt like an eternity, they returned home, deciding to try again in April. William consistently made it clear to Anna that she was insignificant to him and that he didn't love her. However, Anna refused to accept this. Michelle grew tired of the situation and decided to intervene. On April 15th, Michelle gave William an ultimatum. He had to choose between her and Anna. He couldn't continue to lead both women on. Michelle also issued a stark warning. If Anna wasn't gone by April 20th, she would take drastic action. Building a snowman was a sinister euphemism for killing someone and hiding their body in a location where it would remain frozen and undiscovered. After Michelle clearly expressed her feelings to William, she was unable to reach him. She assumed he had chosen Anna over her. The next day, Sunday the 16th of April, Michelle left voicemails for William in an attempt to convey her emotions. However, William called Michelle to inform her that he was single again, having ended his relationship with Anna. The breakup was messy, but Anna was in the process of returning to Russia. As it happened, William's car had collided with a deer, leaving him stranded at the Ali Murtal store. He asked Michelle to meet him there, which she agreed to, despite being in the middle of a family gathering on Easter Sunday. Michelle left her family's house and drove to the store, where she and William reconnected. They celebrated their rekindled relationship by having sex in William's car on the 17th of April. Anna's body was discovered in the forest at the start of the investigation into her death. The investigators had no idea who she was, as there was no identification on her, and she had only been in the state for about a month. There was no sign of a murder weapon, only litter scattered around her. However, among the trash, a clear plastic bag caught their attention, containing a KFC receipt, an empty Pepsi cup, and a KFC chicken bag. The KFC receipt was the crucial piece of evidence, bearing a date, time, and debit card number. The debit card was traced back to Kevin Thomas, who was subsequently tracked down by the investigators. Kevin revealed that he and William had a weekly habit of getting lunch at KFC every Friday, and the receipt was from a purchase about a week before his questioning. Kevin had been the one to expose William's complicated romantic relationships. The investigation into Anna's death was the only reason William's infidelity had ever come to light. Kevin also recalled that William had borrowed his shotgun, claiming he wanted to go to the woods to blow off some steam. After obtaining Kevin's statement, the police shifted their focus to William and Michelle. William's behavior became increasingly suspicious, as he was caught on camera in stores where he had purchased cigars and Star Wars Legos. He even confided in Kevin that he was splurging on things he couldn't afford in an attempt to lift his spirits. On the 16th, William broke down in tears in the arms of a store employee, claiming his girlfriend had just dumped him. However, William had actually moved back in with Michelle, and when questioned by the police about his whereabouts on the 16th of April, he falsely stated that he had gone for a drive with Michelle. When asked about his relationship with Anna, William denied any romance, saying he had met her in Corvallis while out walking, went on 2 dates, but realized it wouldn't work out between them, which ended things between them. William said the last time he saw Anna was in mid-March. He also mentioned that Anna had mistakenly posted about their engagement on Facebook, which caused trouble for him with his actual partner, Michelle. William was questioned about trash near his late fiancée, Anna Rapina's body. He confessed to littering, but claimed he'd thrown KFC trash away 40 miles from the scene. Investigators were skeptical. When told his trash was found near another murder victim, William was shocked, then asked for a lawyer. He was arrested April 19th for Anna's murder. Michelle was questioned after William's arrest. Initially, she stuck to their rehearsed story, saying they spent the day together. However, under continued questioning, she admitted lying and gave a new account, claiming William was supposed to call and pick her up, but never did. Later, when Michelle was being questioned by the police, they told her that her boyfriend of a year and a half was being held in custody on suspicion of murder. Her response was a simple, "Okay." The investigator found this reaction suspicious and highlighted it, which caused Michelle's emotions to become visible. She started to whimper and attributed her initial lack of reaction to being in a state of shock. William Hargrove was facing trial in October 2019 for murder, identity theft, and 2 counts of theft, charges that were filed in June 2018. The prosecution sought to have William convicted on all counts, while the defense argued that he was innocent and that Melissa, his burnt lover, was the actual perpetrator. However, the prosecution presented strong evidence against William, highlighting his motive and guilt. It was revealed that William had a second lover, Michelle, who was pressuring him to choose between her and Anna. Furthermore, evidence showed that William had driven with Anna, and his cell phone records placed him near the scene of the crime on the day of her murder, at 4:30 p.m. on Logging Road. The shotgun used to kill Anna was found in William's car, with only his fingerprints on the weapon. Moreover, despite claiming to have no involvement in Anna's death, William was caught using her money to pay off his car insurance, make ATM withdrawals, and go shopping. The prosecution alleged that William had taken Anna to the forest, shot and killed her, and then used her money to pay off his debts, all because he was choosing between Anna and Michelle. The defense argued that their client was innocent and pointed to Melissa as the prime suspect. According to them, Melissa had motives to harm Anna, having previously threatened to build a snowman with her. Furthermore, Melissa's cell phone had been found on the logging road just weeks before Anna's murder, suggesting she had likely been in the area to plan the crime. When searched, Melissa's house yielded Anna's cell phone, which implicated her further. Despite this, Melissa was not charged with any crimes and was called as a witness for the prosecution. Melissa took the stand to testify about her relationships, including how she met William and the dynamics between them. As a late-night cab driver, she had met William at the bar where he worked. With her husband's knowledge and consent, she started an affair with William, which grew intense over time. Eventually, William even rented a room in her house to be closer to her. Both her marriage and her relationship with William were open, meaning they allowed each other to have outside relationships. When Anna first appeared, Melissa wasn't interested. However, by Anna's second visit, which seemed like it would be a long-term stay, Melissa was upset, particularly after seeing her own wedding ring on Anna's finger. Although Melissa had given William an ultimatum, she was not involved in his harming Anna. She claimed she never intended for Anna to get hurt or worse, lose her life. Melissa continued to defend herself against the defense's allegations. The threat about building a snowman was a joke, albeit an extreme one, which was a family joke. Her cell phone was indeed found in the forest, but William had driven her there. She had no idea why he did so or what he was planning. Furthermore, William had given her Anna's cell phone the day before he was questioned by the authorities. Melissa's testimony lasted for 14 hours. Besides Melissa, around 70 other people gave testimony, including Anna's mother, William's best friend and roommate, as well as some of Melissa's family members. In her hometown in Oregon, Melissa faced intense scrutiny, with locals criticizing and bullying her. At one point, she even attempted to take her own life, but fortunately, it was unsuccessful. Prosecutor praised Melissa's efforts, calling them tough, super tough. After a month of court appearances, the judge asked the jury to deliver a verdict. They deliberated for under 3 hours, finding no evidence linking Michelle to Anna's death, unlike William, and clearing her alibi. William maintained his not guilty plea, but the overwhelming evidence proved conclusive, and he was found guilty on all counts, receiving a life sentence with the possibility of parole after 25 years. His attorney, however, announced plans to file an appeal. The jurors in Anna's case developed a strong bond during the trial. After the verdict, They were escorted to the logging trail, the site where Anna's body was found, to pay their respects. Anna will be remembered as a brave young woman who left her Russian homeland to build a new life in the United States. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Cherie Miller. Bruce and Cherie were both born and raised in Flint, Michigan, a city that was once a thriving hub of the Midwest auto industry, but had since fallen on hard times. Cherie Peck Keithley Miller was born on October 13, 1971, and by her own account, she had a deeply troubled childhood. Without a father figure in her life, Cherie grew up in a trailer with her mother, who struggled with addiction and had a string of unstable relationships with men. These men often abused Cherie, starting when she was just 3 or 4 years old. By the time she was 16, Cherie was on her own, and at 17 she got married, became pregnant, and had a child. However, the marriage didn't last, and she remarried and divorced again. Her second husband, Tribby, was convicted of second-degree child abuse after brutally assaulting his own child, causing multiple skull fractures. Tribby was also accused of abusing Cherie's 6-year-old daughter, but he was acquitted due to lack of evidence. Cherie seemed to have a pattern of attracting the wrong kind of men, always searching for someone who could provide her with financial security and emotional stability. By the time she was 26, Cherie found herself a single mother of 3, working multiple jobs to make ends meet, including a position at a nursing home and selling Mary Kay cosmetics. While she wasn't a conventional beauty, Cherie was charismatic and attractive. In 1997, she took a job as an accountant at B&A Auto Salvage, a company owned by 47-year-old Bruce Miller. At this point, Cherie saw Bruce as the kind of stable, successful partner who could finally provide her with the comfort and security she had always been missing. Bruce Leroy Miller was born on July 26, 1951. In his younger years, he worked at General Motors, a common career path for many Flint residents. After leaving GM, Bruce went on to own and operate an auto junkyard, where he would accept old cars and resell their parts. Bruce had 3 marriages and enjoyed activities such as racing and socializing. He was known for his generosity and openness. Initially, Bruce showed no romantic interest in Cherie Keithley, his new employee, but rather offered her support as a single mother facing difficult circumstances. However, Cherie eventually caught his attention, and despite their 20-year age difference, an office romance blossomed. Bruce was flattered by the attention of a younger woman, and they quickly moved from dating to living together. The couple got married on April 23, 1999, in one of Las Vegas's chapels, just 4 months into their relationship. After the wedding, Cherie and her children moved in with Bruce, providing her with the stability she had long sought. Bruce's brother, Chuck Miller, revealed on the TV show Snapped that Cherie often praised Bruce, saying he was the best thing that had ever happened to her, as he provided her with a normal life and the means to make her happy. Chuck's wife, Judy, added that Bruce was smitten with the young, attractive blonde, whom he considered the perfect wife. While friends voiced concerns about Cherie's excessive spending habits, which went beyond her means, Bruce chose to ignore it. Cherie would later admit that she had been trying to fill a constant void by instantly maxing out her credit cards and spending all the cash she could find. Despite her friends' misgivings, Bruce remained unconcerned about his wife's spending habits. Cherie, a hard worker, had a job as a Mary Kay cosmetic saleswoman, allowing her to sell products to customers at home or while traveling across the country to manage her accounts. In fact, Bruce even bought her a computer to support her work. The turning point came with this purchase. In 1999, Cherie Miller stumbled upon adult chat rooms while using her home computer to research a vacation destination. At the time, social networking didn't exist, and text messaging was not common. Instead, people connected with each other in online chat rooms, some of which were adult in nature and allowed users to flirt anonymously, share fantasies, and engage in virtual romances. According to friends, Bruce was aware of his wife's online flirting but didn't see it as a problem. He loved his wife, was happily married, and planned to adopt her children. He preferred to trust her rather than letting suspicions overshadow their family life. Cherie soon became comfortable in the virtual world and began regularly logging into chat rooms, sharing her deepest sexual fantasies with strangers under various aliases. Detective Kevin Shanlian, who investigated the murder case, testified that Cherie had at least 25 different aliases. In 2016, Cherie admitted that she was glued to the computer. She explained that Bruce worked at the store and had his own business, so he was often away. Cherie spent hours flirting online, driven by a need to control everything. She obsessively controlled people who trusted her, treating every man and every relationship like a new level in a video game, each one more challenging than the last. Among the men Cherie Miller met online was Jerry Cassidy, who used the pseudonym Rena Dudes. Born on October 6, 1960, in Kansas City, Missouri, Jerry was a married man who raised a son, enjoyed deer hunting with his brothers, and had a dream of becoming an FBI agent while working as a homicide detective. However, when he reported corruption involving falsified records to a coworker, he faced retaliation, was demoted, and eventually forced to resign after 9 years of service. Despite doing the right thing, the experience ended his career. Depression, drinking, and substance abuse followed, which led to the breakdown of his marriage. Later, Jerry got his life back on track, moved to Reno, Nevada, and became a security guard at Harrah's Casino. In his free time, he frequented chat rooms where he met Cherie Miller. Their online correspondence turned passionate, and in July 1999, they met in person in Reno, where Cherie claimed to be attending a Mary Kay convention with a friend. The online romance blossomed into a physical affair, and Jerry thought his life was finally taking a turn for the better. Cherie presented herself as a wealthy businesswoman living with a disabled husband who was seeking a discreet sexual encounter. Jerry believed her, as his friend Carol Slaughter would later recall. At the time, Jerry was at a low point in his life. His marriage had ended, and he was in a new neighborhood with no friends. He became deeply infatuated with Cherie, telling Carol Slaughter that Cherie was exceptional in the bedroom. Throughout the summer and fall, Cherie used her cosmetics business as a front for frequent trips to Reno, where she would secretly meet with Jerry. The two exchanged explicit emails and instant messages, including intimate videos, and even went so far as to rename their online accounts, with Cherie calling herself Jerry's Fool and Jerry calling himself Cherie's Fool. Despite his background as a cop, Jerry seemingly failed to notice any red flags, blinded as he was by Cherie's professions of love. Whether due to naivety, flaws, or emotional vulnerability, Jerry proved to be an easy target for Cherie's manipulation. She quickly wove a web of deceit, convincing him that he needed to kill her husband. The impact on Jerry was evident to those around him. His friends noted that after Cherie entered the picture, he became increasingly erratic, exhibiting symptoms akin to bipolar disorder. He would be overly excited and energetic before her visits, only to plummet into painful depression after she left. As early as September, Cherie claimed to be pregnant with Cassidy's child, sending Jerry fake evidence, including doctored photos, a forged positive pregnancy test, and even fake belly pictures. Shortly after, she feigned that her husband Bruce had discovered her infidelity, beating her and causing her to miscarry. Unbeknownst to Jerry, Cherie had actually undergone a tubal ligation in 1995, rendering her sterile. Jerry had no reason to doubt her lies, and so he believed every word. After losing the baby, Cherie announced that she was pregnant again, this time with twins. Jerry begged her to leave her abusive husband Bruce, take the children, and come live with him. Cherie feared for her life and Jerry's, claiming Bruce had mafia connections and wouldn't let them leave. Despite her fears, Cherie continued to secretly meet Jerry in Reno. During one of these meetings, Jerry was arrested for drunk and disorderly conduct at a casino, which temporarily halted their online communication. After his release, Jerry decided to protect Cherie from further danger by distancing himself from her and returning to Missouri to reconcile with his family. The online relationship continued, with Cherie sending Jerry photos of her ultrasound and growing belly. On November 5, 1999, Jerry received an ominous email, allegedly from Bruce, threatening to prevent the twins' birth. Alarmed, Jerry tried to contact Cherie but received a message from her hours later, saying she had to leave for a few days. The next day, Jerry received a message from Bruce, revealing that he had forced Cherie to have an abortion. The message included disturbing photos of a battered Cherie. Jerry had reached his breaking point. The tragic deaths of his twin children at the hands of Bruce Miller had left him devastated and consumed by anger. He held Bruce responsible not only for the loss of his 3 children, but also for the suffering of the woman he loved. The next day, November 8th, Jerry confided in Cherie, declaring his intention to kill her husband. Together, they began to orchestrate a plan to take his life. They carefully mapped out routes, identified ideal parking spots, and pinpointed the perfect location and time to dispose of the body. Jerry then embarked on the long journey from his home to Michigan. As Bruce prepared to leave work, he received a call from Cherie, following their plan. She asked him to pick up a pizza on his way home, distracting him from the impending danger. Unaware of the threat lurking behind him, Bruce failed to notice Jerry approaching, shotgun in hand, before he pulled the trigger. After committing the crime, Jerry returned home while Cherie set the next part of their plan in motion. She contacted Bruce's brother, Chuck, pretending to be worried about her husband's prolonged absence, and requested that he drive to the junkyard to check on him. When Chuck arrived, he found his brother's lifeless body on the floor, lying in a pool of blood, with a close-range shotgun wound to the chest. Witnesses reported that Cherie reacted with screams and tears upon learning of Bruce's death. The crime scene was promptly discovered, but the perpetrator had left behind no trace or evidence. Investigators found that Bruce typically carried large sums of cash, leading them to initially suspect that his death might have been the result of a botched robbery, since his wallet was missing. Suspicion fell on John Hutchinson, a friend and employee who had recently borrowed $2,000 from Bruce. Police questioned Hutchinson, searched his home, and seized his weapons, but he denied any involvement. Although Hutchinson failed a polygraph test, the investigation proved inconclusive, and he was eventually released. A theory that the murder was committed to falsify vehicle identification numbers was explored, but none of the leads panned out, and the case was eventually closed. In the meantime, Cherie's behavior seemed suspicious to Judy Miller, the sister of Bruce, the victim. Just 2 days after her husband's death, Cherie was seen dancing happily in a bar in Otisville, Michigan. 2 weeks later, she had already started dating a local delivery boy named Jeff Foster, not Jerry Cassidy, her supposed lover. Jerry Cassidy had expected to be with Cherie after the murder, but she started to distance herself from him instead. A month after the murder, Cherie moved her new boyfriend into her house and cut ties with Jerry, leaving him heartbroken. It was likely at this point that Jerry realized he had murdered an innocent man due to Cherie's manipulation, and feelings of guilt overwhelmed him. He transformed from Cherie's lover to an investigator and discovered that all the accusations were fabricated by Cherie herself. On February 11, 2000, Jerry took his own life in his apartment in Odessa, Missouri, using a .22 caliber rifle. His body was discovered in a chair with an open Bible on his lap. The Bible was open to Matthew 5, which contains the passage, "Thou shalt not kill, and whosoever shall kill shall be liable to judgment." It seemed that Jerry had judged himself, confessed his guilt, and taken his own life as punishment. Cassidy's mother revealed in an interview a few days after the body was removed that while cleaning the apartment, family members found a briefcase containing 3 suicide notes and an envelope attached to the outside. Jerry's motive was revenge against the woman who had broken his heart. In his confession, the former detective explained that he had killed Bruce Miller because he believed at the time that Bruce had abused Cherie and was responsible for the deaths of his 3 children. However, the letter also revealed that Cherie Miller had lied to Jerry about Bruce's behavior. On February 22, 2000, police arrested Cherie Miller as she arrived at the airport with her boyfriend, Jeff Foster, after a trip to Reno. She was charged with second-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. Prosecutors believed that Cherie was a skilled manipulator who had convinced Jerry to kill her husband under false pretenses. Despite the evidence against her, Cherie maintained her innocence to her deceased husband's family. On December 12, 2000, the trial of Cherie Miller began in the state of Michigan, generating widespread national attention due to the unusual nature of the internet-related crime. The public's interest was exceptionally high. The prosecution presented thousands of messages exchanged between Cherie and Jerry, revealing the numerous lies she had told. Cherie claimed she had undergone a fallopian tube ligation years prior, and therefore could not be pregnant with Jerry's children, and that she had never been abused. However, the prosecution alleged that Cherie wanted her husband Bruce dead for financial gain, as a divorce would not have provided her with sufficient money. In contrast, the defense argued that Cherie received only a minimal sum after Bruce's death and would have enjoyed a more affluent lifestyle had she remained married. The defense also suggested that Jerry Cassidy was seeking revenge as a spurned lover and had fabricated evidence against Cherie. Cherie told the jury that her online sexual communications with Jerry were merely a fantasy, and that she had lied about her pregnancy to help him cope with depression and about the abuse to deter him from contacting her. Cherie vehemently denied writing the messages that described the crime, implying that Jerry had forged them using his expertise as a homicide detective. However, the police discovered evidence of the messages on Cherie's computer. The online correspondence played a crucial role in the trial. Miller was convicted on December 22nd, receiving a life sentence for murder and 54 to 81 years for conspiracy. In 2007, while incarcerated, she was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder and other mental health issues. Miller began treatment and filed an appeal, even getting married for the 4th time. Michael DeNoia saw Miller's story on the news and was captivated by her charm. He wrote to her, and in 2008, he visited her in prison, proposing during the visit. Although some reports claim they got married in April 2008, there is no evidence to support this. In 2008, Miller's conviction was overturned on appeal, and she was released from prison in 2009. A federal judge ruled that Jerry's suicide letter should not have been considered evidence, as Cassidy was deceased and the defense could not cross-examine him. The judge ordered a new trial and released Miller on bail. In 2012, Cherie was returned to jail to resume serving her original sentence, following a court ruling that re-evaluated the admissibility of the suicide letter. Having spent 3 years outside, Cherie continued to proclaim her innocence. In 2016, Cherie Miller unexpectedly confessed to her role in her husband's death in a 4-page letter to a judge. Many saw this as a bid for sympathy or profit. Cherie wrote that being sent back to prison after 3 years of freedom triggered her admission. She was devastated to leave her daughter and granddaughter behind, and the full weight of her actions hit her. She described her husband as a great man who only loved and wanted to adopt her children, and she was filled with remorse for ordering his killing. Cherie gave a 2022 TV interview, confessing Bruce wasn't mob-connected and didn't abuse her. She faked bruises and ultrasound scans to control Jerry, fearing Bruce would discover her true identity. Cherie knew Jerry's depression and had evidence, but thought she could manipulate the jury. She rejected a 15-year plea bargain, leading to a life sentence. Now incarcerated, Cherie seeks peace, saying it's hard to face her actions. Hey detectives, welcome back. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Tanya McKinley. Tanya McKinley was born on January 25, 1961, in the small town of Milton, Florida. She grew up in a loving family and was very close to her older sister. After graduating from high school, Tanya decided to move to Pensacola, a town about 25 miles away from her hometown. She pursued a career in the medical field. Tanya moved to a new city with her cousin Vanita, and they shared an apartment. After moving in, Tanya met a man named James, and they began dating. They eventually moved in together and had a son, Timothy, in 1983. Although Tanya was happy to be a mother, her relationship with James was troubled. They argued frequently, and about a year after their son was born, they decided to go their separate ways. By the end of 1984, Tanya was temporarily living with Vanita, who was now married with 2 children. Tanya planned to find her own place as soon as possible. On New Year's Eve, Tanya, Vanita, and her husband decided to celebrate at a local bar. They left their children at a late-night daycare. Around midnight, Vanita and her husband were getting ready to leave, but Tanya wanted to stay a little longer. Since the daycare closed at 1 a.m., Vanita agreed to pick up Tanya's son, allowing Tanya to stay at the bar. Before leaving, Vanita asked Tanya how she planned to get home, since they had driven there together. Tanya replied that she would get a ride from their acquaintance at the bar. However, when Vanita woke up on January 1st, she found that Tanya had not yet returned home. At first, Vanita thought Tanya might have slept over with a friend, so she was not too worried. Then, Vanita's mother-in-law arrived with heartbreaking news. Tanya had been found dead around 3 a.m. A Pensacola resident was on her way to the vet with her daughter. While driving, her daughter pointed out a person on the side of the road. Pensacola thought it might be a mannequin, but when she got out to check, she discovered it was a human body. Pensacola immediately returned home and called the police. Upon arriving at the scene, officers found the body of a woman lying in an empty lot beside the road. She had no shoes, her tights were down, and her dress was pulled up. Near the body, a blue towel with what appeared to be bloodstains was found. The police identified the victim as 23-year-old Tanya McKinley. Further investigation led them to discover her shoes and purse nearby, containing identification with her name on it. The body was turned over to medical experts for further examination. Meanwhile, police continued to process the crime scene. They soon discovered that Tanya likely did not die where she was found. There was no significant blood near the body, except for a stain on a towel, and signs on the ground suggested that the body had been dragged to the side of the road. On the towel and Tanya's body, investigators found several clues, including dog hair and a human hair. They suspected that the hair belonged to the killer, and that the killer may have owned a dog. Medical experts determined that the Tanya had suffered a head injury from a heavy object, but her cause of death was actually strangulation. They also confirmed that the Tanya had been sexually assaulted. A semen sample was collected from her body, but at the time, DNA analysis was not yet widely used in forensic science. However, the experts were able to establish that the suspect had type B blood. Police began to develop a list of potential suspects. Police turned their attention to Tanya's ex-husband, James. After talking to Tanya's family and friends, police discovered that James and Tanya had argued frequently before and after the birth of their son. When Tanya decided to end the relationship, James was unhappy and tried to convince her to stay. Police believe that James followed Tanya to the bar on New Year's Eve, leading to a confrontation that ended in murder. They brought James in for questioning, but he denied any involvement in the crime. He also agreed to provide hair samples for comparison. Although experts were unable to extract DNA from the samples, they were able to compare the hairs under a microscope. The results showed that James' hair was significantly different from the hair found on Tanya's body and the towel. As a result, the police temporarily ruled him out as a suspect. Police focused on everyone who was at the bar on New Year's Eve. They asked Vanita if she had noticed anyone acting strangely or aggressively toward Tanya, but she said the evening had gone off without incident. Police also discovered that after Tanya split from her ex-husband, she had started dating a man named Kurt, who was a bartender at the bar where she spent New Year's Eve. Kurt was working the night of the murder. When questioned, Kurt denied any involvement in the crime, claiming he had gone to a New Year's party with friends after his shift. The police reviewed all the testimony and concluded that Kurt had enough time to commit the crime. Based on numerous interviews with people at the bar, the police determined that Tanya was last seen alive at 1:15 a.m., but no one saw her leave. The police also spoke with local residents where the body was discovered. A family reported driving past the scene at around 2 a.m. and were certain that there was no body at that time. This meant that Tanya was killed about 1.5 hours after she was last seen alive. During this time, Kurt was unable to provide an alibi. He volunteered to take a lie detector test, but the results were inconclusive, and further investigation revealed that Kurt's blood type did not match the killer's blood type, as determined by a semen sample. As a result, Kurt was cleared of the crime. Unable to analyze DNA from the killer's semen, and with no witnesses or concrete evidence, police could only assume that the perpetrator likely lived in the area where the body was discovered. The case had been closed for years due to lack of concrete evidence. Timothy, who was only 18 months old when his mother died, was raised by his father and Tanya's family. Together, they kept the truth about his mother's death a secret. When Timothy was 14 years old, he was informed that his mother had died in a car accident. As Christmas approached that year, out of curiosity, he searched his father's closet for his present, and Timothy stumbled upon a shocking letter addressed to television host Montel Williams, written by his father himself. In a letter, Timothy's father wrote asking for help in solving the murder of Timothy's mother, Tanya. The letter included a detailed account of the crime, which was the first time Timothy learned of his mother's tragic fate. Years later, in the early 2000s, police reopened Tanya's case, hoping that advances in DNA technology might help identify the killer. Police sent all available evidence to a lab for analysis. Experts discovered that the blood on a blue towel near Tanya's body came from a man, not Tanya. They created a DNA profile of the unidentified man and uploaded it to the FBI database. But there were no matches. The case was put on hold until 2015, when it was reopened, 30 years after the murder. Through investigation, the police discovered from the FBI's archived database that a person had some similarities with the DNA found at Tanya's crime scene. However, the match was not strong. To investigate further, the police learned about the person's family background and even contacted his relatives for assistance. These relatives cooperated and provided DNA samples for comparison. Unfortunately, the DNA analysis showed that his family was not involved in Tanya's death, leaving the police with no new leads. In 2018, a journalist named Tony Adam became interested in Tanya's case. Tony contacted the police offering help, and the police became suspicious of his involvement. Tony joined the investigation despite having no background in criminal investigations. The police, who had made little progress in the case, hoped that Tony's involvement wouldn't hinder the investigation. In 2019, a year after Tony got involved, police decided to identify the killer's relatives. This time, they enlisted the help of Parabon, a genetic genealogy company, and expanded the search to include primarily the DNA of known criminals. Parabon expanded its search to public genetic databases, which were much larger in scope. Unlike DNA evidence collected from a crime scene, these databases contain DNA samples that people have voluntarily uploaded to find relatives. To find the killer, experts used a process of elimination, carefully analyzing the family trees of potential relatives to identify someone who matched their suspect's criteria. They were looking for a man who was at least old enough to have committed the crime in 1985 and had a connection to the area where the crime was committed. In 2020, police identified a suspect in Tanya's murder. Daniel Wells, 57, had been arrested in the late 1980s for assault and indecent exposure. At the time, he was living in Pensacola, working as a carpenter and living with his wife and children. But to confirm whether Daniel was actually the killer, detectives needed to compare his DNA to the profile they collected from the crime scene. To prevent Daniel from fleeing, the police approached cautiously. They kept watch, waiting for an opportunity to collect a DNA sample from him without arousing Daniel's suspicion. Daniel threw a cigarette butt out of the car window near his workplace. The police collected the cigarette butt and immediately sent it to the lab for analysis. Experts extracted DNA from the saliva on the filter and compared it to the DNA of the killer in the Tanya case. The results were a match. The police eventually identified Daniel as the culprit and arrested him the same day. Despite the DNA test results, the police still tried to get Daniel to confess. They arranged for a patrol officer to stop Daniel's car under the pretext of doing a routine ID check. Detectives then approached Daniel, informing him that he needed to accompany them to the station without providing any further explanation. By withholding information, they intentionally kept Daniel in suspense, allowing them to proceed with the investigation cautiously. The police approached Daniel, informing him that he needed to come with them to the police station without further explanation. During the investigation, the detectives slowly steered the conversation toward Tanya's murder, asking Daniel about his whereabouts on the night of the murder. At first, he claimed to have never seen Tanya. However, when the detectives revealed that his DNA was found at the crime scene, his story began to unfold. As the questioning continued, Daniel's denials became increasingly unconvincing, and he grew more and more agitated. Detectives made it clear that the DNA evidence was irrefutable and that he would face consequences for his actions. As the interrogation continued, Daniel denied his guilt and became increasingly agitated. The police said the DNA evidence was incontrovertible and he would face the consequences for his actions. Faced with the evidence, Daniel finally broke down and began to speak. He and Tanya went to his house, where they had sex after drinking. However, an argument broke out, the argument escalated, and in a fit of rage, Daniel picked up a heavy wooden cutting board and hit Tanya over the head. When he realized she was dead, Daniel panicked and dumped her body in a location where it was later discovered. On his way back, Daniel discarded the Tanya's belongings and returned home. When questioned about the dog hairs found on the Tanya's clothes and towel, he attributed them to his roommate's black Labrador. Contrary to Daniel's claim that Tanya died from a head injury, the medical evidence clearly showed that the cause of death was strangulation. In a possible chain of events, Daniel struck Tanya in the head, but when he realized she was still alive, he resorted to strangling her. The police gathered enough evidence to arrest him for murder. Police then contacted Tanya's family, including her son Timothy, to inform them of the developments in the case. Timothy was deeply moved, thanking the police for finally identifying his mother's killer. 2 weeks after his arrest, Daniel's body was found in his cell. An investigation confirmed that he had committed suicide. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Samantha Josephson. Samantha Josephson was born to Seymour and Marcy Josephson in Princeton, New Jersey, and grew up in Robbinsville, New Jersey. She majored in political science at the University of South Carolina. She plans to attend Drexel University School of Law with the goal of specializing in international law. Samantha received a full scholarship to Drexel University and a partial scholarship to Rutgers University, and hopes to pursue a career in international law. Samantha was a member of the Alpha Gamma Delta sorority and had the opportunity to study abroad in Barcelona. While in South Carolina, She also visited Madrid and Paris. Samantha had a boyfriend named Greg. Samantha and Greg communicated regularly through text messages and phone calls every day whenever possible. Even though Samantha was about to enter law school, they still planned to build a future together. Greg planned to move in with her and support her. However, everything changed on Friday, March 29, 2019, when Samantha did not return to her apartment. On March 28, 2019, Samantha decided to hang out with her roommate and friends in Columbia, South Carolina. Although her boyfriend, Greg, was unable to come along, the group visited several bars before ending up at the Bird Dog Bar in 5 Points, a popular place for students to socialize. Samantha was hanging out with friends, but she kept texting her boyfriend, Greg. She wanted him to drive to Columbia to be with her. However, they had plans to meet up the following weekend, so Greg decided not to go to Columbia with her. He kept in regular contact with Samantha. Around 2 a.m., Samantha left and returned to her apartment alone. She called an Uber to get home. Samantha was waiting for an Uber. While waiting, she talked to Greg on the phone at around 2:04 a.m. and told him she was on her way home. She had used Uber many times before to get to and from bars. Shortly after requesting a ride, a car pulled up at the curb where Samantha walked up to the car, realized it wasn't hers, and then turned around to return to her spot on the sidewalk. She was wearing an orange shirt and black pants. After some time, a black Chevrolet Impala pulled up in front of Samantha. She said goodbye to Greg, assuming the Impala was her ride. She opened the door, exchanged a quick word with the driver, and got into the back seat. The car sped off immediately. Meanwhile, the actual Uber she had ordered arrived at the pickup location, but the driver couldn't find Samantha and eventually canceled the request and left. The black Chevrolet Impala circled the area several times before targeting Samantha. This behavior suggests that the driver was aware of the college students who congregated on 5 Point streets after the bars closed, waiting for the car to leave. Meanwhile, Samantha's boyfriend, Greg, had been tracking her movements using the Find My Friends app to make sure she got home safely. He noticed that she was moving in the opposite direction of her apartment, which initially did not raise any concerns because he thought she might be visiting a friend. However, when he texted her to check in, he received no response. Greg tried calling Samantha, but she didn't answer. He sent her multiple texts, but they showed up as delivered, not read. This meant Samantha wasn't reading his messages. Her phone's location stopped sharing, which surprised Greg because it had never happened before. He thought maybe she had left her phone in the Uber. Concerned, Greg contacted her friends and roommate to see if they had heard from her or if she had made it home safely. However, no one had any news about her whereabouts. Greg decided to rest, hoping Samantha would show up tomorrow morning. The next morning, Samantha was missing. Her roommates filed a missing person report. Her boyfriend, Greg, drove 2 hours to Columbia to help search for her. Shortly after the report was filed, a group of turkey hunters found the body of a young woman in a wooded area in New Zion, about 65 miles from 5 Points. The hunters immediately called 911 after the discovery, and the local sheriff's office quickly dispatched deputies to the scene. The body was later confirmed to be Samantha Josephson. An autopsy revealed that Samantha's body had more than 120 separate stab wounds, affecting multiple areas, including her face, head, neck, arms, torso, legs, and feet. In an attempt to defend herself, her fingernails were severely damaged as she tried to evade a sharp object. Evidence suggested a double-edged knife had been used, and she had then been dragged into the woods. An autopsy revealed that her body contained only 20 milliliters of blood. Samantha had suffered severe blood loss. Police quickly obtained surveillance footage from the bar the night of the incident, which showed Samantha getting into a black Chevrolet Impala. The footage showed the car circling the block several times. Police discovered that Samantha had accidentally gotten into the killer's car, thinking it was her Uber. The Uber that Samantha had called arrived a short time later. However, when the driver realized that Samantha was not there, he canceled the ride and left. Police believe that the suspect may have used a childproof lock to lock her inside, as when the childproof lock is on, the doors can only be opened from the outside of the car, so Samantha would not have been able to get out at that point. A description of the vehicle was released to the public in hopes of identifying the perpetrator, and shortly after, police spotted a black Chevrolet Impala during a 3 a.m. patrol on March 30th, while patrolling the area where Samantha was abducted. When the police stopped the car, the driver immediately jumped out and started running. After a short chase, he was arrested. When police checked his ID, they discovered that the man arrested was Nathaniel Rowland, 24, of New Zion. During a search of the vehicle, patrol officers discovered a child car seat in the back, surrounded by blood stains. This discovery prompted them to call for backup. As police suspected it was a crime scene, homicide detectives were called to investigate and conducted a thorough search of the vehicle. They discovered multiple blood stains on the passenger seat and in the trunk, as well as a bloody footprint on one of the rear windows. Samantha's cell phone was found on the floor of the car. Police later discovered that Nathaniel had tried to sell it to a pawn shop earlier that day, but he had refused their offer of $125 and left the phone in the car. Police also found that the child locks were activated, which Nathaniel had used to lock Samantha inside. Several cleaning products, including bleach, window cleaner, and antibacterial wipes, were found in the car. Nathaniel had cleaned his car, but there was still a trace of blood in the car. During questioning, Nathaniel repeatedly denied any involvement in the kidnapping and murder of Samantha Josephson, despite the overwhelming evidence against him. He maintained his innocence. Police searching Nathaniel's body discovered traces of Samantha's DNA under his fingernails. However, no DNA from Nathaniel was found on Samantha's body. Police pieced together the evidence and speculated that Samantha was the victim of a sudden and violent attack. The fact that the child-proof locks in the car were still active at the time of Nathaniel's arrest led them to conclude that he must have activated the feature as soon as Samantha got into the car. Nathaniel suddenly stabbed her multiple times with a double-edged knife. Taken by surprise by the brutality of the attack, she struggled to fend off the blows, which explains the multiple stab wounds to her hands and the severe damage to her fingernails. Samantha was attacked by Nathaniel, who scratched Nathaniel's hand, leaving skin cells under her fingernails as evidence. After the attack, Nathaniel drove to a remote road in New Zion and dumped Samantha's body in the nearby woods. Upon returning home, Nathaniel posted on social media, acting as if nothing unusual had happened. Nathaniel's neighborhood is minutes away from where Samantha's body was found. A background check on Nathaniel showed that he attended South Carolina State University in 2017. However, there is no record of him graduating and it is unclear what job he was doing at the time of the incident. Nathaniel was previously arrested for assaulting and robbing a woman in October 2018. Police searched Nathaniel's girlfriend, Maria Howard's apartment in New Zion, where he was living. They found evidence in a trash can behind the apartment, including a sock and towel with blood stains on it, which belonged to Nathaniel. The blood was later determined to be Samantha's. Police also discovered a blood-stained white cloth, duct tape, bleach wipes with blood on them, and a double-edged knife with obvious blood stains. Tests later confirmed that blood found on the double-edged knife, bed sheets, car, and bleach wipes matched Samantha Josephson. Nathaniel was charged with kidnapping and murder. The trial took place. Nathaniel maintained his innocence despite overwhelming evidence against him. In the summer of 2021, Nathaniel's defense team argued that he was innocent, as there was no DNA of his on Samantha. Prosecutors countered Nathaniel's claim of innocence with a large amount of evidence gathered in the case. Key evidence included CCTV footage showing Nathaniel's car picking up Samantha in 5 points and driving away, as well as several incriminating physical pieces of evidence found in his car. Additionally, cell phone tracking showed that Nathaniel and Samantha's phones were in the same location at the time of the murder. Furthermore, Nathaniel lived near where Samantha's body was discovered. The prosecution presented 31 witnesses, including a person who saw Nathaniel cleaning the murder weapon, the pawn shop owner to whom he tried to sell Samantha's cell phone, and Nathaniel's ex-girlfriend, who claimed that her daughter had blood on her shoes after being in Nathaniel's car. After the murder, Nathaniel did not contact any witnesses to testify in his favor, and no members of Nathaniel's family came forward to defend him. Despite this, Nathaniel maintained his innocence and appealed to the judge. The jury deliberated for only an hour before returning a guilty verdict, and Nathaniel was subsequently sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.